Part 65. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 643. Song Tanhua only knew that Tao Minor would definitely go back if she couldn't wait for her, but he didn't expect that she had to wait for so long. Princess, I have no intention of doing so. Feng Guiu also knew that Song Tanhua was not someone who let go of pigeons at will. She said this deliberately to let him know that Tao Minor had been waiting for a long time and had misunderstood. Then you find a chance to tell her clearly. This girl has been waiting for you for an hour and a half. If you don't go and don't tell her the reason, she will definitely be a little sad. Song Tanhua clasped her fists and bowed, "Thank you, Crown Princess, for reminding me. I will take the initiative to explain to Miss Tao." After Song Tanhua left, Feng Guiu sighed. Song Tanhua didn't know what she thought of Tao Minor. What should I do if Luo Hua is deliberately ruthless? Xiao Jinyan came back and saw Xiaju standing on the porch. It was such a cold day and she wanted to sit on the couch holding the heater. How could she suddenly stand here and blow the wind? What are you doing? Feng Guiu turned around when he heard the sound and saw Xiao Jinyan walking slowly. He was wearing a black court dress and a black fox fur outside. His gray hair made his face cold and dignified. "Your Highness." Xiao Jinyu walked up to her, lowered his eyes and looked at the person in front of him. His slender fingers touched her palm-sized face, and his cheeks felt a little cold. "Why are you standing here blowing the wind? Come in quickly, your face is red." Feng Guiu smiled and took Xiao Jinyan's arm and walked inside. Chengzi had already raised the curtain in advance. "Your Highness's hands are so warm." Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at Xiaju. She has always had a sweet mouth since she was a child. After entering, Feng Guiu took off her embroidered shoes and sat cross-legged on the couch. She pulled up the mink velvet blanket on the side and covered her legs, then wrapped her feet. Xiao Jinyan untied the fox fur. Chengzi stepped forward to take the fox fur and hung it on the hanger. He lifted up the clothes and sat down on the couch. Chengzi hung up her fox fur, brewed 2 cups of hot tea, placed one in front of Xiao Jinyan and one in front of Feng Guiu, and then left. Feng Guiu picked up the teacup and brought it to her lips and took a few sips. After drinking the hot tea, her body became warmer, and then she spoke. "I just met Song Tanhua, so I stood on the porch and asked a few questions. Ask Dao Tao about her homework." Xiao Jinyan picked up the teacup, brought it to his lips and took a sip. The tea was a little hot. "No, how old is Dao Tao?" "He can write and read the 4 books and 5 classics, which is already very impressive." "I am asking about Tao Minor." Feng Guiu told Xiao Jinyan what happened that day. Xiao Jinyan chuckled softly, "How come you are such a lazy person and become a matchmaker?" Feng Guiu said, "My concubine and Su Qingqing are both settled, but Tao Minor is not. She stayed in the palace for a few years before she left. She was in care for a few years. She is a bit old and her parents are worried. There is also pressure. If you can't stand the pressure and marry casually, if it's good, the couple will respect each other as guests, but if it's not good, it will be a mess, and if you meet a domestic violence man, you will be in trouble." Feng Guiu sighed after saying this. In modern times, there are people who are still studying in college at the age of 20, and people who get married at the age of 30 or 40. Although they are also urged to get married, compared to here, they are a little more tolerant. Xiao Jinyan paused while drinking tea. He always felt that Xiaoju was somewhat responsible for what he said. If it were any other prince, neither Su Qingqing nor Tao Minor would have the chance to leave the palace. "Do you think Song Tanhua is interested in Tao Minor?" Feng Guiu said, "I don't know, and it's hard to ask directly. If you like this matter, it's better for the person involved to tell me. I'm afraid that Lu Shui didn't mean it, and I'm afraid that Lu Shui meant it but missed it." Xiao Jinyan asked gently, "Do you want me to help you?" Feng Guiu said with a smile, Your Highness wants to help, so naturally it is the best. So how do you plan to help? Xiao Jinyan raised his eyes and glanced at Xiaju, with a curious look on his face. Of course I will marry him. Feng Guiu was stunned for a moment, then reacted and couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Your Highness is smart. If Song Tanhua is interested in Tao Min'er, she will definitely refuse. Xiao Jinyan said, Well, Song Tanhua's character is not bad. She is not a person who wants to follow the dragon and the phoenix. If she is not willing, she will definitely refuse. When choosing a master for Dao Tao, Xiao Jinyan and the emperor spent a long time before choosing Tanhua. Feng Guiu had no idea about solving this matter. She suddenly asked with a smile, Your Highness, how about we have hot pot for lunch? Xiao Jinyan, want hot pot for lunch? Feng Guiu knew as soon as he saw Xiao Jinyan's expression that he was afraid of eating spicy food. Don't worry, Your Highness, I asked Chengzi to prepare Yuan Yang hot pot, half of which is spicy soup and half of which is clear soup. This was the first time Xiao Jinyan heard about Yuan Yang hot pot. Is it so magical? Feng Guiu chuckled twice. Of course, I will ask Chengzi to stew a chicken, and use the chicken soup as the bottom of the pot for you. It is nutritious and not spicy, and babies can also eat it. Xiao Jinyan knew that Xiaju would not lie to him, so he nodded and agreed, then we will have hot pot for lunch. When Feng Guiu saw Xiao Jinyan agreed, he couldn't wait to call Chengzi to prepare. Chengzi was waiting outside, and when she heard it, she immediately went to work. In the past few years, Chengzi has prepared hot pot countless times, making everything at her fingertips. Vegetables, fish, and meat are available in Ziyun Pavilion, and they are all picked fresh, which is very fresh. The hens are also slaughtered right now, and some wolfberry soup is put in them. When lunch arrived, Chengzi ordered the palace maid to put the ingredients on the table one by one. There was a mandarin duck pot in the middle of the round table. Xiao Jinyan looked at the mandarin duck pot. It had the same pattern as Tai Chi, just as Xiao Ju said, half was spicy soup and half was clear soup. When it was time for dinner, Dao Tao and Susu walked in hand. When they saw Xiao Jinyan and Feng Guiu, they first called out, Father, King, Mother, Concubine. At home, Feng Guiu suggested that if the two babies were not polite, it would ruin the atmosphere of the family getting along. Feng Guiu smiled and said, Baby, let's have hot pot today, including your favorite meatballs. Susu ran all the way over, climbed up on the chair with both hands and feet and sat down, looking at Feng Guiu expectantly. Mom, I want to eat meatballs. Okay. Feng Guiu picked up the spoon, scooped out the meatballs and fish balls and put them into the bowl in front of Susu. Dao Tao also climbed up on the chair and sat down. She turned to look at Xiao Jinyan. Father, I also want fish balls and meatballs. Yes. Xiao Jinyan picked up the spoon and scooped out some meatballs and fish balls for his son. Susu ate one fish ball and one meatball, and boasted in a milky voice, Mom, the fish balls are so good, and the meatballs are also good. Feng Guiu could see through her daughter's thoughts at a glance. She praised the food because she wanted to eat a lot. She ate slowly and wanted to save it for her. Chengzi made a lot of meatballs and fish balls and put them in ice cubes for easy storage in winter. Then you eat more. There's a lot of trouble in the nest. Susu happily lowered her head and scooped up another one and started eating it. Halfway through, she raised her head and looked at Feng Guiu again. Mom, Xiao Guo hasn't had enough trouble yet. Feng Guiu discovered that Susu had always been thinking about Chu Lingfeng and would not forget him even if he had something delicious to eat. As an enlightened mother, she naturally respects her daughter's decision. Then what do you want to do? Susu thought for a moment and said, I want to give it to Xiaoqiu Kuasai. Okay. Feng Guiu ordered, Chengzi, take a soup bowl and put some meatballs and stuff in it for Prince Chu. My slave understands. Chengzi took out a very thick bowl with good thermal insulation effect. She filled it with some fish balls, meatballs, vegetables, and mutton, then closed the lid and turned around and walked out. Chu Lingfeng ate alone, and his lunch was very rich. In the past 2 years, he had grown a lot, and his figure was a little stronger than before. He was no longer as thin as a bamboo pole. While having lunch, he saw Chengzi coming, and he looked at Chengzi suspiciously. "This is what the little princess asked the slave to give to Prince Chu to try," Chengzi said as he opened the lid of the soup. This was chicken soup without spicy. Prince Chu didn't like spicy food. Chu Lingfeng saw a soup bowl full of meatballs, and Susu didn't forget about him no matter what he ate. He raised his head and looked at Chengzi, then "Please, Aunt Chengzi, tell the little princess that I like it very much." "Okay, Prince Chu, continue to eat. I will go back and tell the little princess." Chengzi walked out with a smile. Chu Lingfeng looked down at the meatballs in front of him. It smelled very fragrant, like chicken soup. He picked up a fish ball with his chopsticks and put it into the bowl. When it cooled, he put it into his mouth and took a bite. It was delicious. After Chengzi came back, she specifically mentioned what Chu Lingfeng said to Susu, "Little princess, Prince Chu said he likes to eat it very much." Susu said happily, "Wo also likes it?" Chengzi smiled and stepped aside. Feng Wu enjoyed spicy food very much. While wiping his nose, he looked at Xiao Jinyan. "Your Highness, what do you think of the taste?" Xiao Jinyan picked up a fish ball and looked at it for a few times. This was his first time eating fish balls. Xiao Ju had never let him down. "It tastes good. The fish balls are delicious." Feng Wu was quite proud. "Of course, these fish balls are handmade with pure fish meat, no additives. The taste is fresh and tender, and the texture is also elastic." Xiao Jinyan used to be curious about why Xiaju always said strange things, but now he knows that they are all modern things and modern vocabulary. It also made him curious, what is modern times like? How is it different from here? Asterisk. Song Tanhua just came back from the palace today. When he got out of the carriage, he subconsciously glanced at the opposite side and remembered what the crown princess said today. 4 days had passed since the invitation for tea. He got off the carriage and walked into Tanhua mansion. When he entered the study, Ji-Yuan prepared a charcoal fire and hot tea. After thinking about it, I picked up a pen and wrote a letter. After he finished writing, he folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and sealed it with wax. Then he called Ji-Yuan. "I will give this letter to Miss Tao of Tao Mansion, do you understand?" The letter was not long, and he explained clearly why he did not go to the appointment that day, and offered to treat me to dinner tomorrow as an apology. My subordinates know. Ji-Yuan took the letter and walked out. Ji-Yuan had heard a bit about Miss Tao's family and knew which Tao family she belonged to. When they arrived at Tao Mansion, Ji-Yuan took the letter and followed the servant in. He looked at Tao Mansion and saw that the houses of rich people were bigger than those in Tanhua Mansion. The servant stepped forward and reported, "Master, this man said he was looking for a young lady." Tao's father was discussing the engagement with the Chen family. He didn't have time to do this, so he casually asked, "What's the matter?" Ji-Yuan said politely, "Mr. Tao, this letter was written by my master to Miss Tao." Father Tao frowned when he heard this. "Give it to me, I will give it to my daughter later." Ji-Yuan nodded and said hello and placed the letter with both hands. Father Tao took the letter and glanced at the envelope. There was no signature on it, so he put it away. After the engagement was discussed, the Chen family went back. There was an engagement tomorrow, and Father Tao's eyes were filled with smiles. Thinking of the letter, he took it out and took a look at it. He thought for a moment, if this was a love letter, his daughter would be engaged, but she couldn't screw it up because of someone else. Father Tao thought for a while and put the letter away. Tao Minor was suddenly in a low mood today. Tomorrow was the day of the engagement, and Mr. Chen also knew people who were courteous. She was not dissatisfied, but she was just in a low mood. Ding Xiang was a little worried. Miss, did you not sleep well last night? Go to bed early today, the day after tomorrow is the engagement day. Yes, Tao Minor responded, and went to wash and rest. The next morning, the Tao family was busy inside and outside. Tao Minor was in a low mood yesterday, and she was a little absent-minded today. Ding Xiang called her several times but she didn't hear it. Even when Wan came, she was still the same. In the palace, Song Tanhua looked at Dao Tao writing and found that Dao Tao had made great progress. She was smarter and more hard-working than her peers, and her handwriting didn't look like that of a 3-year-old child. He had heard that the prince was very smart when he was a child. Looking at Dao Tao again, it is said that a tiger father will have a dog son. The son of the prince is naturally a dragon among dragons. During the rest, Qin Xiao walked in. Song Tanhua, the prince asked you to go to the study. He has something to find you. Okay, I'll go right away. Song Tanhua put down the book in his hand, stood up and walked out slowly. All the way to the study, Qin Xiao pushed open the door, then he bowed and walked in, stepped forward to greet, Your Highness, may you be blessed with good health. Xiao Jinyan raised his head and looked at Song Tanhua, Get up. Thank you, Your Highness. Song Tanhua stood up straight, waiting for the prince to ask questions. Xiao Jinyan stared at Song Tanhua for a while and said, Song Tanhua is both virtuous and talented, but he has not yet married. My cousin has admired Song Tanhua for a long time. I wonder if Song Tanhua has any ideas. Song Tanhua was not the first time to encounter this. He bowed deeply, Thank you for your kindness, Princess. I have my own plans to marry a wife. I hope Your Highness will help me. Really? Xiao Jinyan picked up the teacup and looked up at Song Tanhua, Does Song Tanhua have a sweetheart? Song Tanhua paused after hearing this, pursed his lips and said, I do have a sweetheart. Xiao Jinyan asked, Who is it? Song Tanhua was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that His Highness would be so curious about his private affairs. Your Highness, I'm afraid it will be bad for her reputation if I tell her. Xiao Jinyan chuckled, What's the matter? Song Tanhua is not young anymore. If you like her, I can arrange a marriage for you. Song Tanhua lowered his eyebrows and nodded, Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. I haven't confirmed this yet. Xiao Jinyan said, Then wait until Song Tanhua decides, and I will arrange a marriage for you. Song Tanhua said, Thank you, Your Highness. In the evening, Xiao Jinyan relayed Song Tanhua's words to Xiaju. Feng Wei grabbed Xiao Jinyan's arm excitedly, Your Highness, do you think Song Tanhua's sweetheart is Tao Minor? Xiao Jinyan said, I'm not sure either. Feng Wei thought for a while, from Song Tanhua's tone, is he going to show his hand? Xiao Jinyan looked at Xiaju still thinking about other men and was a little unhappy. Song Tanhua is an adult man. If he can't catch his own marriage, he can only blame his incompetence. Feng Wei agreed, Yes, if Song Tanhua was like my eldest brother, he would have succeeded long ago. Good night. Please vote for the monthly ticket and recommendation ticket. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 644. Speaking of her eldest brother, Feng Wei only learned about their love history through Su Qingqing, and it had lasted 4 years since they met. The year after she returned, Jun Wuxian and Su Qingqing got to know each other, and the meeting scene was also very comic. The process of getting along is naturally very interesting. She always thought that her eldest brother was a very stable man, but she didn't expect that he had a dark belly and a vicious tongue. Being together for 4 years is a bit like falling in love over time. The eldest brother noticed that Su Qingqing liked him when he stole a kiss. Although the eldest brother didn't say anything on the surface, he acted quickly and accurately. He came back specially on Chinese Valentine's Day to express his feelings. Song Tanhua is far behind. Song Tanhua came back from the palace, freshened up, and then went to Fujiang restaurant. I booked a private room in advance, and the waiter had already prepared it, with refreshments on the table. Song Tanhua was a little hungry now. When she saw the pastries on the table, she ate one to satisfy her stomach. About half an hour later, half of the plate of pastries in front of me was eaten, but Tao Minor didn't come to keep her appointment. Song Tanhua drank tea for a while, and another half-hour passed. He looked outside. The sun was setting when he came, and it was already dark now. Gun, are you sure you sent the letter to Miss Tao? Guandeo, Master, my subordinate did not see Miss Tao, but he saw Master Tao and handed the letter to Master Tao, saying that he would pass it on to Miss Tao. Song Tanhua pondered for a moment, wondering whether it was because Tao Minor didn't see the letter, or, he thought of the Crown Princess again, and Miss Tao would probably go to the appointment after seeing the letter. Song Tanhua waited for another half an hour before leaving Fujiang restaurant. Gun followed behind and watched his master wait for an hour and a half. He didn't know why Miss Tao didn't come to keep the appointment. The next day, Tao Minor was woken up by Ding Xiang early in the morning to freshen up. Tao Minor felt a little sleepy, looking at herself in the mirror, thinking that today's engagement was a definite matter. She thought about Song Tanhua again. She had read so many story books but never practiced them. Ding Xiang noticed that Tao Minor was absent-minded and asked in a low voice, "Miss, what's wrong with you?" Tao Minor raised her head and looked at Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang was sold into Tao's house at the age of 6. She was the same age as her and grew up with her. "I'm worried." Ding Xiang asked, "What are you worried about, miss?" "I don't like Mr. Chen. After getting married." Tao Minor paused for a moment. Maybe it was because she was unwilling to give in, or maybe it was because getting along with him after getting married was different from what she had imagined. There is a difference between liking it and not liking it. Ding Xiang finally understood, "Miss, do you not want to be engaged to Mr. Chen?" Tao Minor was silent for a while, nodded, and then said, "Forget it, just take it one step at a time. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought." Song Tanhua came to Tao Mansion in a carriage and saw Tao Mansion decorated with lanterns and colors, as if there was a happy event. Gun turned to look at Song Tanhua, "Master, Tao Mansion seems to be holding a happy event." Song Tanhua stared at the red lantern for a long time. Is it inappropriate to pay a visit to the Tao Mansion for a wedding? Just when Song Tanhua was hesitating, she heard Gun ask, "Master, do you want to visit?" He pursed his lips and said, "Go and have a look." Okay. Gun parked the carriage under a nearby tree. Song Tanhua raised her head and looked at Tao Mansion. This was her first time here. Gun went up to ask. When the Tao family learned that it was Song Tanhua, they immediately went in and informed Mr. Tao. Song Tanhua didn't wait long when she saw Mr. Tao walking out hurriedly, saluting with a smile on his face. Song Tanhua suddenly came to the humble house, making the humble house shine. Song Tanhua said, "Master Tao, you are too polite." Father Tao didn't know what happened to Song Tanhua, so the most important thing was to invite people in first. "Song Tanhua, please come inside." Song Tanhua nodded and followed Mr. Tao in. We sat down under Master Tao's warm reception, and then the maid served hot tea. Father Tao said with a smile, "It's a coincidence that Song Tanhua came here. Today is the day when my daughter is getting engaged. If Song Tanhua doesn't mind, how about staying and having dinner together?" Song Tanhua paused as she picked up the teacup. Mr. Tao only has one daughter, so Tao Minor is the one who is engaged? Tao Minor is engaged today? To whom? Father Tao was stunned for a moment. Song Tanhua also realized that she had made a mistake and immediately changed her words. "I didn't expect that today is the day when Ling Qianjing gets engaged. I didn't even prepare a gift." Mr. Tao said cheerfully, "Song Tanhua is too polite. Song Tanhua has already given me enough face by coming. The congratulatory gifts are not important. My daughter is engaged to Mr. Chen. I met Miss Tao, so I naturally had to prepare a gift. I was too abrupt, so I will leave first. Song Tanhua said and got up and walked out. Father Tao looked at Song Tanhua with a puzzled look and then left. It's okay to stay and drink. After Song Tanhua came out, he looked back at Tao Mansion. He never imagined that Tao Minor would be engaged in just a few days. No wonder I didn't come to the appointment yesterday, probably because I was afraid of misunderstanding. Gun asked doubtfully, Master, do you plan to go back now? Song Tanhua said, go pick out a gift. At this time, the Chen family came with the betrothal gift. Song Tanhua looked from a distance and recognized the Chen family at a glance. After watching them walk into Tao's mansion, he withdrew his gaze and got into the carriage. After shopping around for a long time, Song Tanhua didn't know what girls liked, and she couldn't just do it casually. He opened the door, looked at Gun sitting in front, and asked, Gun, what kind of gifts do you think girls like? Gun thought for a moment and said, don't girls like rouge and powder? Gold and silver jewelry and so on. Song Tanhua thought it was too vulgar to give these gifts. He glanced at the shop and asked Gun to stop the car. He got out of the carriage and walked into Beauhua Hall. He walked around Beauhua Hall and saw a pair of porcelain dolls, so he bought them. Give it to someone. The boss immediately understood, give it to a girl, right? The wrapping paper should be more beautiful. After that, the boss also inserted a pink flower on the outside of the package. Song Tanhua thought the flowers were very beautiful, paid the silver, and walked out with the things. After coming out, Song Tanhua handed the porcelain doll in his hand to Gun, you take it over for me. Gun took the gift and raised his head in confusion, Master, are you not going? Song Tanhua said, no. Gun was a little confused. He took so much trouble to choose the gift, but he didn't go. The master's mind is hard to guess. Gun took the gift to Tao's house. Song Tanhua went home. When passing the arch bridge, he heard someone shouting, hurry up, someone jumped into the water. Song Tanhua lifted the curtain and looked out, only to see a lot of people gathered at the bridgehead. He stopped the carriage, got out, and when he walked into the crowd, the person had been rescued. It was a woman in her 20s, and her belly was about 7 months pregnant. After the woman was rescued, she cried out of breath, it was Master Chen who betrayed me. Song Tanhua was stunned when he heard the word Master Chen. Could it be which Master Chen? He took 2 steps forward and squatted in front of the woman. Which Master Chen are you talking about? Of course it's the rice merchant Chen family. He said he would marry me, but he got engaged to another woman. How can I live? Song Tanhua was shocked on the spot when he heard this. Isn't Master Chen playing with people? He got a girl pregnant and then abandoned her. He is worse than pigs and dogs. That's right. I heard that Master Chen is engaged to the daughter of the Tao family. The Tao family is very rich. What's the difference between him and Chen Shimei? He doesn't even want his own child. Song Tanhua listened to the discussions and curses of the crowd. He stood up and turned around to get on the carriage. Go to Tao Mansion. Yes, Master. The coachman drove the carriage back to Tao Mansion. At this time, Tao Mansion was very lively. Tao Minor sat next to Master Chen. She was wearing a red dress and delicate makeup, more charming than usual. Master Chen praised, Minor, you look so beautiful today. Tao Minor raised her head and glanced at Master Chen, smiled, and then looked away. The housekeeper walked in happily and said with a smile, Miss, someone came to give you a gift. Tao Minor was stunned for a moment. She didn't tell anyone about her engagement, nor did she tell the crown princess and Su Qingqing. Who could it be? Who is it? The housekeeper walked in with someone. Tao Minor immediately recognized the man behind the housekeeper as Gun, who was beside Song Tanhua. Why did he come? Gun had seen Tao Minor several times. He stepped forward and handed over the gift with both hands. Miss Tao, this is an engagement gift from my master to Miss Tao. Tao Minor was a little unbelievable. Song Tanhua sent it? How did he know that I was engaged today? Tao's father saw it and said with a smile, Song Tanhua came to the mansion today and learned that you were engaged. He said that we had known each other for a while, so we should prepare a gift. Mr. Chen smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes, so Miss Tao still knows Song Tanhua. Yet Tao Minor looked at Gun again, her eyes looking at the gift in front of her. She reached out to take it. It was a little heavy, with a small pink flower pinned on it, very beautiful. Song Tanhua actually gave her a gift? She was so excited, but after the excitement, she felt a little disappointed. Go back and tell Song Tanhua to thank him for his gift. I will, Gun said and left. Tao Minor was holding the gift, and she couldn't wait to open it and see what Song Tanhua would give her. But in front of everyone, she had to hold back. Young Master Chen looked at the gift in Tao Minor's hand for a few times, and said with a smile, Minor, don't you open it and take a look? I'm a little curious about what gift Song Tanhua would give. Tao Minor hesitated for a while and refused, there are so many people here, I'll open it later. Then she handed the gift to Ding Xiang beside her, and she took it into the boudoir. Young Master Chen's face darkened a little, and then he smiled and said, you have a good relationship with Song Tanhua. Tao Minor replied with 2 words, General. Young Master Chen smiled again, Minor is being modest. Being able to get to know Song Tanhua shows that Minor is very powerful. Tao Minor. How powerful is it? The housekeeper strode in again and reported, Master, Song Tanhua is here. Tao Minor's body stiffened when she heard this. Why did Song Tanhua come again? Father Tao smiled and stood up to greet him. Before he reached the door, Song Tanhua had already walked in. Song Tanhua, you're here just in time. How about sitting down and drinking 2 glasses of wedding wine? Song Tanhua looked at Tao Minor, and seeing Mr. Chen sitting next to her, he retracted his gaze and nodded. Mr. Tao is getting engaged. Does Mr. Tao know the other party's character? Tao Minor clenched her handkerchief nervously. Why did Song Tanhua ask this? Father Tao was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Mr. Chen is well educated and well mannered, so his character is naturally beyond doubt. Really? Song Tanhua looked at Mr. Chen, his voice a little deeper, is Mr. Chen hiding something from Miss Tao? Mr. Chen stood up and bowed, Song Tanhua, please forgive me for making a fool of myself. I fell in love with Miss Tao at first sight and am now engaged to her. How could I lie to her? Father Tao found that Song Tanhua was a little different from before, and he asked in confusion, Song Tanhua, what are you doing? Song Tanhua said, I was originally going back home for an urgent matter, and when I passed by the arch bridge, I saw a pair of 8-year-old women jumping into the river to commit suicide. The woman was about 7 months pregnant. Mr. Chen's face changed when he heard this. Song Tanhua glanced at Mr. Chen and continued, the woman said that she was abandoned by Mr. Chen and turned around to get engaged to Miss Tao. As soon as these words came out, the main hall suddenly fell silent. Father Tao reacted and asked coldly, Mr. Chen, what's going on? Mr. Chen hurriedly explained, Uncle, this must be a misunderstanding. I'm afraid that Mr. Song heard it wrong. Song Tanhua said, if Mr. Chen thinks that I am framing you, you can call the person over to confront. Mr. Chen was stunned for a moment. Chen's father glared at his son, then smiled and comforted him, Master Tao, it was that woman who pestered my son and used tricks to have a child, and she also wanted to marry her son into the Chen mansion because of her mother's status. Master Tao, don't worry, your daughter will never be wronged when she marries into the Chen family. Mr. Chen nodded vigorously. My father is right, she pestered me, I clearly refused, but she still used various tricks. Tao Min'er, who had been silent all the time, suddenly stood up and looked at the Chen father and son. I won't get engaged this time. Mr. Chen was a little anxious. He grabbed Tao Min'er's hand and said, Min'er, how can you say this on a happy day? I really like you. Father Tao was shaking with anger. You Chen family deceived the Tao family first. Do you think my Tao family is easy to fool? Butler, drive them out. The butler brought several guards to drive the Chen father and son out. Father Tao pointed to the betrothal gift bag on the ground and ordered, there are also betrothal gifts, throw them out together. Before the Chen father and son could speak, they saw the betrothal gifts being thrown out one by one. There were many people watching the excitement at the gate of Tao's house. The Chen family father and son came with the betrothal gifts in a grand manner, but left in embarrassment, becoming the topic of conversation after dinner. After Chen's father and son left, Tao's father said with guilt, it's my fault. I didn't think highly of the other person's character and urged you to get engaged to Mr. Chen. It's my fault. Wang was also very angry. How dare you say that? If you hadn't kept urging, how could you get engaged so quickly? You almost ruined Min'er's happiness for life. Tao Min'er walked in front of Song Tanhua and bowed, thank you Song Tanhua for coming to tell me. If it weren't for Song Tanhua, I wouldn't know the true face of Mr. Chen. Song Tanhua said gently, we have known each other for a while, so I naturally can't watch you being deceived. I did what I should do, no need to thank me. Tao Min'er pursed her lips, but still asked, why didn't Song Tanhua come to the appointment that day? Song Tanhua was stunned for a moment, and his tone was full of doubts. I wrote a letter to Miss Tao the day before yesterday, explaining why I didn't come to the appointment. Good night. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 645. Tao Minor was also confused. What letter? I didn't see the letter you wrote. Song Tanhua was stunned when he heard it. Tao's father heard the letter and had a bad feeling. Could it be that letter? Tao Minor seemed to think of something and turned to look at her father. Dad, do you know the letter? Tao's father looked at his daughter with a guilty conscience. Someone sent a letter the day before yesterday, but I was busy discussing the engagement at the time, and I thought it was sent by my previous blind date, so I didn't give it to you. As soon as Tao's father finished speaking, Wang grabbed his arm. Are you old and confused? You hid your daughter's letter and didn't give it to me. Tao Minor looked at her unreliable father. If there was that letter, maybe she wouldn't be engaged to Mr. Chen, and there wouldn't be these troubles. She stretched her hand in front of Tao's father. Dad, where is the letter? I'll get it for you, Tao's father said and went to the room to get the letter quickly. When the letter was brought, Tao's father felt so guilty. Minor, the letter is here, I haven't even seen it. Tao Minor saw the letter and couldn't wait to take it. The wax seal on it had not been touched. She opened the wax seal, took out the letter inside, and opened it again. It was a matter of a moment. The letter was not long. A few words explained why she didn't come that day. Not only that, Song Tanhua also said that he would treat her to a meal to make up for it. Missed it, missed it. She couldn't help but complain loudly in her heart. Dad, you almost broke my marriage. Although eating doesn't mean anything, it is also a little progress. Song Tanhua saw Tao Minor open the letter with his own eyes. It was only then that he realized that Tao Minor didn't go to the appointment because she didn't see the letter. After reading the letter, Tao Minor looked up at Song Tanhua expectantly. Song Tanhua, is it too late to eat now? Song Tanhua was stunned for a moment, then nodded. I just haven't had lunch yet. Tao Minor said, I didn't eat just now, so let's go together, and go to Fujiang restaurant. The food and wine there are good. I'll treat you. Thank you Song Tanhua for exposing the scumbag today. Song Tanhua shook his head and refused. No, no, I said I'll treat you, so I'll treat you. Let's go now. Right now, I didn't eat in the morning, and I only had 2 bites for lunch. I'm hungry. Tao Minor's anxious tone was almost like pulling Song Tanhua out directly. Song Tanhua said yes, and the two went out. Tao's father and Wang Shi watched the 2 figures disappear at the door before they reacted. Master, what's going on? Tao's father said, doesn't Minor like Song Tanhua? Song Tanhua. Wang paused and guessed, does Song Tanhua have feelings for Minor? Tao's father said, how should I know? I heard that Song Tanhua is well educated, talented, humble, and polite, and is very appreciated by the emperor and the prince. Inviting Minor to dinner may just be polite. But Minor is so happy. Wang sighed, let Minor go with her. You can't just marry Minor off. The character of the husband's family is very important. Tao's father nodded repeatedly, Madam is right. Tao Minor was sitting in Song Tanhua's carriage. The carriage was not big, and there was enough space for 2 people. Tao Minor was excited just now because she didn't have to get engaged to Mr. Chen, and the depression in her heart was gone. Now she is nervous, sitting in the same carriage with Song Tanhua. Song Tanhua didn't know what to say, and both of them were silent. It was not until they arrived at Fujiang restaurant that the nervousness faded away. Tao Minor often comes to Fujiang restaurant for dinner. The shopkeeper here is very familiar with her, so she asked for a quiet private room. After Tao Minor and Song Tanhua sat down face to face, they ordered dishes. Song Tanhua said, Miss Tao, order whatever you like. Don't be polite. Tao Minor would naturally not be polite. She is an old customer of this restaurant. Although she didn't come here for a few years after entering the palace, her parents also came here frequently. Then what do you want to eat? Song Tanhua thought for a while and said, I like something lighter. Tao Minor felt a little disappointed when she heard this, because her taste was a little heavy and she liked spicy food. Speaking of spicy food, she hadn't eaten hot pot for a long time. It seems that she and Song Tanhua are less compatible again. But soon, she thought of the Crown Princess and the Crown Prince. The Crown Princess likes spicy food, but His Highness doesn't like it. His taste is a bit similar to Song Tanhua's, and he likes light food. So, she still has a little chance? Seeing her holding the menu without saying anything, Song Tanhua asked in confusion, Miss Tao, what's wrong? Tao Minor suddenly came back to her senses, I'm fine, I'll order the dishes. She lowered her head and continued to order dishes. She ordered 4 dishes, 2 of which were light, and the other 2 were to her taste. After ordering, the waiter walked out with the menu. It was past mealtime, so the dishes were served quickly. 4 dishes and 1 soup, all delicious. Song Tanhua glanced at the food in front of him, 2 meat dishes, 2 vegetables, and a bowl of chicken soup. Tao Minor was really hungry. She picked up 2 pieces of meat with chopsticks and ate them. She asked casually, Song Tanhua, what were you busy with the past few days? Song Tanhua looked up at Tao Minor and said softly, I caught a cold a few days ago and rested at home for 3 days. Tao Minor paused chewing and couldn't help but worry, are you okay now? It's cold and you can catch a cold if you're not careful. Song Tanhua said, I'm fine now. Tao Minor pursed her lips and looked at Song Tanhua. She couldn't help but wonder if Song Tanhua wrote to her 4 days later because he caught a cold. It should be. Song Tanhua is humble and polite, pays attention to etiquette and keeps his promises. Song Tanhua. Song Tanhua looked up, Tao Minor hesitated for a while, not knowing how to start. She wanted to confess directly, but Song Tanhua was a scholar and upright. What if she suddenly confessed and scared him? Song Tanhua was different from Jun Wuxian. Why did Song Tanhua come to my house today? Song Tanhua explained, I was waiting for you at Fujiang restaurant yesterday, but I didn't see you coming, so I felt a little abrupt. Tao Minor didn't know how long Song Tanhua waited yesterday. Someone like Song Tanhua, who kept his promise, must have waited for a long time before leaving. I kept you waiting in vain. I didn't expect you to give me a gift. Song Tanhua said, we have known each other for a long time. It is only right for me to give you some gifts, but... Tao Minor asked, but what? Song Tanhua said, I didn't expect you to get engaged so soon. It was also a coincidence that I came to your house on the day of your engagement. Tao Minor smiled, that means it must be God's arrangement to arrange you to save me from the scumbag. Otherwise, if I didn't know the truth, I would find out when I got married next spring, and it would be too late. Song Tanhua was stunned when he heard this. Tao Minor said again, I don't like Mr. Chen. My parents want me to get married early. I'm not young anymore. The crown princess is younger than me and her child is 3 years old. When I met Mr. Chen that day, he impressed me as gentle and polite, knowing when to advance and retreat. He was different from the men I had dated before. He was like a human being, and then I compromised. I didn't expect that those were all his disguises, and I was also deceived by his disguise. Song Tanhua listened quietly, and understood why Tao Minor would make such a choice. Tao Minor came out of the palace, and her age was there, so it was normal for her parents to be anxious. That's why she was deceived by Mr. Chen. Tao Minor reminded, Song Tanhua, eat quickly, otherwise the food will get cold. Yes, Song Tanhua responded and continued to eat the rice in the bowl. After lunch, Song Tanhua sent Tao Minor back. Fujiang restaurant was not far from Tao Mansion, and it didn't take long to arrive. After the carriage stopped, Tao Minor looked up at Song Tanhua who was sitting opposite. He was wearing a plain long gown, with a handsome face, sitting upright, and full of the fragrance of books. I'm going back. Song Tanhua nodded, yeah. Tao Minor then retracted her gaze, pushed the door open and walked out. Ji-Yun had already taken down the horse stool. She stepped on the horse stool and got off. After walking a few steps, she heard someone asking behind her. Miss Tao, you just said that Mr. Chen looked like someone, who was that person? Tao Minor paused and looked back. She found that Song Tanhua had come out of the carriage at some point and was standing next to the carriage. At this glance, she found that his face was a little pale. She didn't know if it was because he had just recovered from an illness or because of the cold wind. She thought for a while, then walked back a few steps and came to Song Tanhua. She was a little embarrassed, but Song Tanhua asked, so why not take this opportunity to tell it? After struggling for a while, she looked up at Song Tanhua again and told a very simple secret. Far away in the horizon, close at hand. Song Tanhua is in the top 3, and he was named Tanhua because of his handsome appearance. Song Tanhua knew that Tao Minor was talking about him without thinking. He was stunned for a while. He was just curious and wanted to know who Tao Minor was talking about. Because Mr. Chen looked a bit like him, he compromised. It turned out that he looked like himself. Song Tanhua felt a little ashamed, I am too stupid. Tao Minor stared at Song Tanhua without blinking, and didn't know what he meant by the sentence. Because she wanted to know, she asked. What does Song Tanhua mean by this? Song Tanhua about his hands, I am too stupid. I only know Miss Tao's feelings now. It's okay, you don't have to feel burdened. It's my business to like you. That's it? I'll go back first. Tao Minor turned around and left after saying this. She finally mustered up the courage to express her feelings. After she finished speaking, she realized that it was much better than keeping it in her heart. Song Tanhua stood there, watching Tao Minor walk into the Tao mansion. He retracted his gaze. Go back. After saying that, he got on the carriage. Gun scratched his head and got on the carriage with a puzzled look. When Tao Minor stepped into the main hall, she saw her parents sitting on chairs drinking tea. When they saw her come back, they put down their teacups at the same time as if they had discussed it, and walked over at the same time. Minor, have you finished your meal? Where's Song Tanhua? Did he go home? Tao Minor nodded. I finished my meal and went home. Tao's father looked gossipy. When did you and Song Tanhua become so familiar with each other? Wang's face was also gossipy. Why haven't I heard you mention it before? If I had known, I should have invited Song Tanhua to my house for a meal and some wine. Tao Minor told the truth. I met him in the palace. Tao's father and Wang said oh at the same time, and then opened their eyes wide to look at their daughter. In the palace, you flirted with Song Tanhua. Tao Minor. Dad, you are so bold. What flirting? That's the imperial palace. If you are caught doing something wrong, you will be sent to the cold palace. Wang pinched Tao's father's arm again. Stop talking nonsense. If something happens to my daughter, I will never forgive you. I just asked casually. Didn't Minor leave the palace? Tao's father looked at his daughter again, still with a curious look on his face, and asked, then how are you, Song Tanhua, now? I have told Song Tanhua that I like him. That's it? I'm tired and going to take a nap. Tao Minor yawned and returned to the boudoir. Father Tao and Mrs. Wang looked at each other. What does this look like? Without Mr. Chen and the engagement, Tao Minor felt relaxed and had breakfast happily. I was thinking about whether I should go to Tanhua Mansion to wait for him to come back in the afternoon and ask him to go to dinner or go to the theater. Thinking about eating yesterday and eating again today, is it too urgent? Tao Minor sighed. Minor, Minor. From a distance, Tao Minor heard her mother calling her. She raised her head and saw Mrs. Wang running in. She reminded, Mom, please be careful. She is an elderly person. If she falls, but how good is it? Mrs. Wang looked unconcerned and said cheerfully, someone came to propose marriage. Tao Minor said without thinking, put it down, I don't want to marry anyone now. Wang was still smiling, silly daughter, how can you back out? Don't you like Song Tanhua? Now people are coming to propose marriage, why are you unhappy? Tao Minor was stunned for a moment, suspecting that she heard wrongly. She raised her head and looked at Mrs. Wang. Mom, did you just say that you came to propose marriage? Wang said, Song Tanhua. Tao Minor still couldn't believe it. How is it possible? How could he come to propose marriage? He didn't even mention it yesterday. If he had such an idea, why didn't he say it yesterday? Mrs. Wang said happily, daughter, go out and take a look. Song Tanhua is here too. Tao Minor was stunned for a moment, stood up and ran out. Seeing this, Mrs. Wang reminded her while chasing her, Minor, slow down, the snow is slippery, what will happen if you fall? Tao Minor ran to the main hall in one breath and saw several people sitting in the main hall, including her father and Song Tanhua. The other two people are, His Highness and the Crown Princess. She was so shocked that she didn't react for a while. Yesterday, after Song Tanhua returned, she went directly to the palace. Xiao Jinyan was reviewing the memorial at that time. When he saw Song Tanhua coming in a hurry, he thought there was something urgent. I saw him kneeling on the ground with a plop, Your Highness, I have come to propose marriage. No matter how calm Xiao Jinyan was, he was still stunned for a moment. Yesterday, Xiaju said that Song Tanhua was not as good as her brother, but today she came to propose marriage? Which daughter do you like? Song Tanhua said, Your Highness, it's Tao Minor. Xiao Jinyan was happy, the speed seemed not too slow. I will do whatever I promise you. Song Tanhua added, Wei Chen wants to ask the crown princess to be a matchmaker. Xiao Jinyan chuckled softly, you know how to think about Tao Min'er. However, the crown princess has a good relationship with Tao Min'er, so she is naturally willing to be the matchmaker. Just pick a good day and inform me. Song Tanhua said, I've already picked it, it's tomorrow. Good night, Spicy. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 646. Xiao Jinyan thought it would take 2 days at the earliest, but he didn't expect that it would be tomorrow soon. How impatient was he? Tomorrow is tomorrow. There can't be only one matchmaker. I and the crown princess will go together as matchmakers. Song Tanhua kowtowed happily, thank you for your grace, your highness. When Xiao Jinyan told Xiaoju, Feng Guiu thought he was joking. Are you trying to comfort me? Xiao Jinyan chuckled, when will I use these words to comfort you? Feng Guiu looked at Xiao Jinyan in shock, is that true? Of course it's true. I'll go with you tomorrow. Not everyone asks for the crown prince and princess to be a matchmaker. Asterisk. Feng Guiu saw Tao Min'er at the door and said with a smile, why is Min'er standing outside and not coming in? Only then did Tao Min'er react, and excitedly stepped forward to greet her, the daughter of the common people pays her respects to your highness, the crown princess. Xiao Jinyan said, get up. Thank you, your highness. Tao Min'er stood up and came to stand next to Tao's father. She glanced at Song Tanhua secretly and found that he was also looking at her. She looked away with some embarrassment. Song Tanhua and Tao Min'er were in love with each other, and the engagement was quickly finalized, just 5 days later. Tao Min'er couldn't be happier. Feng Guiu was also happy. When the date was set, the two began to whisper. I didn't expect you guys to be so quick. There was no news a few days ago. I will propose marriage when there is news. Tao Min'er was a little embarrassed, I just happened to know that Song Tanhua came to propose marriage, and I didn't know that he also invited his highness and you to be matchmakers. My family's ancestral graves are filled with smoke. Tao Min'er couldn't help laughing after speaking. Feng Guiu was a little surprised, how could you not know? Did Song Tanhua propose marriage without telling you? Tao Min'er sighed and briefly told what had happened in the past few days from beginning to end. The whole thing is like this. Who would have thought that the story in the storybook would happen to me? If it weren't for Song Tanhua, I would have been deceived by the scumbag. Feng Guiu said, I knew you would definitely compromise due to pressure. I can only say that the scumbag is too good at pretending. You decided to get engaged before without notifying me. If you had informed me, I would definitely stop it. A man who is knowledgeable and courteous, gentle and elegant, and knows how to advance and retreat. No wonder you fell in love with Song Tanhua at first sight. Tao Min'er smiled sheepishly, didn't the storybook say that this is fate? I like to rely on feelings. Song Tanhua gave me a very good feeling, which also shows that I felt good at the beginning. Yesterday, he also expressed his feelings. I brought 2 matchmakers to propose marriage today, which was such a surprise to me. I even complained to His Highness that Song Tanhua was not as good as my brother. My brother was so quick and ruthless that he directly gave me a betrothal gift. I didn't expect that Song Tanhua usually seemed to be a conservative and steady person. But in the marriage, he's also very impatient, that's probably what men are like. Feng Guiu couldn't help but think of Xiao Jinyan. It seemed that after he was sure of his feelings, he couldn't wait for her to sleep with him, as if he was afraid that she would run away if he didn't. However, the fact that you are now engaged to Song Tanhua can be regarded as a blessing in disguise. Good luck lies ahead. Tao Min'er said, I think so too. If we hadn't gone through that incident, Song Tanhua and I might not have been able to be together so soon. Feng Guiu couldn't help but sigh, oh, my brother's wedding is the day after tomorrow. After the banquet, there will be an engagement banquet, and then there will be your wedding banquet. Tao Minor looked envious. It's good to eat without getting fat. You can eat whatever you want. Who said that? His Highness has been touching my belly these past 2 days, saying that there is a lot of meat here. In other words, doesn't it mean that I am fat? Feng Guo snorted. The 7-year itch has only been gone for 5 years now. When I arrived, I was rejected. Tao Minor couldn't believe it. His Highness really said that. Feng Guo said firmly, of course, can I still lie to you? Tao Minor secretly glanced at Xiao Jinyan not far away, feeling a little confused. Your Highness, it doesn't look like that. After the engagement date was set, Xiao Jinyan and Feng Guo went back without staying long, and the Tao family went out to see each other off. Tao Minor looked at Song Tanhua and asked in a low voice, why didn't you tell me yesterday? Song Tanhua looked away and looked at Tao Minor, smiled and said, it's really abrupt that I suddenly came to propose marriage today, but it's still a surprise. Tao Minor was stunned for a moment when she heard this, and then she smiled. It was a super surprise. Then she looked at Song Tanhua with a puzzled look on her face. I thought that since you read so many poems and books, you would be very slow in terms of emotions, let alone prepare surprises. I didn't expect you to be able to do the same. Song Tanhua was a little embarrassed. He really didn't know much about emotions, and he wasn't good at it either. However, he is not a fool and cannot read. Have you never eaten pork and don't know how pigs run? If you think it's a surprise, that's fine. Tao Minor pursed her lower lip and looked at him expectantly. Did you really get engaged to me because you like me? Song Tanhua was a little confused. Why do you ask that? Tao Minor said, I don't even know how to play music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and I have no talent. I smell like copper all over my body, and my appearance doesn't rank among beauties. What do you like about me? Song Tanhua chuckled, this is what you think. In my eyes, you are gentle and generous, yet informal and very considerate. It's enough for me to have some of these talents, appearance. As for the smell of copper, why haven't I smelled it? This was the first time Tao Minor knew that she had so many advantages. Do I have so many advantages? Song Tanhua said, of course, this is how I felt when I first met you. If you are not good, how could His Highness and the Crown Princess deign to condescend to be a matchmaker? Your Highness is the future emperor, so he naturally has a better eye for people than me. It also shows that I have good vision. Tao Minor smiled and curled her eyebrows. Then I believe what you say. Even if it's not true, I will be a good wife and mother in the future, and I won't hold you back. Song Tanhua said, when we get married in the future, husband and wife are one body, how can we say that we are holding back? Tao Minor smiled again, you're right. After Song Tanhua returned, she began to prepare the betrothal gift. Tao Minor's eyebrows curved with joy. Father Tao looked at his daughter's happy face and said, Minor is really happy today. Wang said, of course, you are going to be engaged to the person you like, how can you not be happy? I am not so happy to be engaged to Mr. Chen. It's good that Minor is happy. I can marry Tanhua Lang. I didn't dare to think about it. I can also let His Highness and the Crown Princess act as matchmakers. The ancestral graves are smoking, Father Tao couldn't help but sigh. Wang felt the same way, His Royal Highness and the Crown Princess treated Minor very well. Your Highness will definitely be a wise king in the future. Jun Mocking and Feng Qingjian rushed back to the capital the day before Jun Wuxian got married. On this day, Susu lay on Feng Wu, eating tea fruit in her mouth, and asked with a milky voice, Mom, we will have our second dinner tomorrow, aren't Grandpa and Grandma coming back yet? I don't know either. Feng Wu took a bite of the tea fruit, I miss them too. They've been gone for a long time, and it's almost the Chinese New Year. After speaking, he took another bite of the tea fruit. Susu took a bite of the tea fruit, thought about it, and suddenly her eyes lit up. Mom, let's go out and look for it, okay? No, it's too cold outside, but it's still warm inside, Feng Guiu said, moving the hand warmer closer to her arms. Susu finished eating the last bit of tea fruit in her hand, clapped her little hands, and climbed down. Feng Guiu reminded, be careful when you go out to play, don't fall, you know. Wo knows it's spicy, so Wo took Dabai to find Grandpa and Grandma together, Susu said, and ran out with her short legs. Feng Guiu paused while biting the tea fruit, looking for Grandpa and Grandma. Are you going out? She ordered. Chengzi, ask Qin Xiao to follow Susu, don't let her fall. I understand, Master, Chengzi responded outside. After a while, she heard Chengzi say, Axiao, follow the little princess and don't let her fall. Otherwise, everyone will feel sad. Not only does everyone feel distressed, but when the emperor feels distressed, the entire palace feels distressed. Susu lay on Dabai's body and shouted, Dabai, rush out! Rush out! Dabai raised his head and glanced at the high wall in front of him, then turned to look at Susu on his back. His eyes seemed to say, are you sure you want me to charge? If I throw you down, whose fault is it? Susu continued to shout, Dabai, come on. Dabai withdrew his gaze and continued walking forward. A carriage suddenly stopped in front of him. Dabai smelled a familiar smell and yelled at the carriage twice, ouch. Susu seemed to understand the meaning of Dabai's roar. She raised her head and looked at the carriage, and saw two people coming out of the carriage. She saw that they were her grandparents. She happily patted Dabai's head and said, get down. Dabai cooperated by lying down on his limbs. Susu slipped off Dabai and threw herself into Jun Mocking's arms. Grandpa, are you back? Jun Mocking bent down and picked her up, pinched her little red face. Well, do you miss Grandpa? Susu nodded vigorously. Yeah, I really want it, Mommy wants it too. When Feng Qinjian saw Susu, her feeling was completely different from the last time she saw Susu. Last time, she just saw how cute she was and liked her. Now, this is her precious granddaughter. After 20 years of separation, her daughter has grown up, and even her granddaughter is 3 years old. She begins to lament that she has missed too much. Susu looked at Feng Qinjian and said in a sweet voice, Grandma, I miss you too. Does Grandma miss you? Of course I do, but I miss me so much. Feng Qinjian reached out and hugged Susu over. The little guy was really not light. Susu said, Mom misses Grandma too. Feng Qinjian's eyes turned red and her nose became sore when she heard this. Let's go find your mother. Susu hugged Feng Qinjian's neck happily. Okay, let's go find Mommy. The excitement was as if I hadn't seen Mom for a long time. Jun Mocking followed slowly, his eyes focused on Feng Qinjian and Susu. Feng Guiu finished eating the tea fruit, drank 2 sips of tea, and was about to take a nap, when she heard Susu shouting excitedly, Mummy, Mommy, Mommy, come back spicy. My mother is back. When Feng Guiu was wondering, the door curtain was opened, and Feng Qinjian walked in with Susu in her arms. The person who opened the door curtain was Jun Mocking. After they came in, he came in and then lowered the curtain. She was stunned for a moment, and after she came to her senses, she hurriedly got off the bed and put on her shoes. Father, Mother, you are finally back. Feng Qinjian put Susu down, stood up and looked at her daughter, who was only 3 meters away from her. She was only 2 months old when they were separated. When they met again, she had not only grown into a big girl, but had also become a mother. She called out, Xiaju. Feng Guiu walked all the way to Feng Qinjian and happily threw herself into her arms. Mother, do you remember everything? Remember me and Dad? Well, I remember everything. It was all my fault. I was forced to leave you when you were so young. Feng Qinjian cried as she spoke. Feng Guiu was extremely excited. How can you blame Mother? Mother is also unwilling to leave me and father. Feng Qingjian looked at her daughter happily, my Xiaju is so sensible. Feng Guiu smiled and looked at June mocking, Dad took care of me well. Without him taking good care of me, I might have grown crooked. You're right. I've worked hard these years, Brother Qing, and I have a father and a mother. Feng Qingjian looked at June mocking, Brother Qing. June mocking said, these are all what I should do, there is no such thing as hard work. Feng Guiu said excitedly, Father, Mother, you came back in time. My eldest brother will get married tomorrow. Speaking of June Wuxian, Feng Qingjian thought of the child who was as skinny as a monkey, I almost forgot, there is also a child named Wuxian. He is 30 years old, right? Why didn't he get married until now? Feng Guiu said with a smile, this is fate. It just so happens that my mother can see my eldest brother get married. Feng Qingjian felt that what her daughter said made sense, yes, no one can say for sure about fate. When June mocking and Feng Qingjian came back, Feng Guiu cooked a sumptuous dinner in person. Feng Qingjian praised while eating, Xiaju is really amazing. He can cook so many delicacies. The key is that they are all my favorites. June mocking reminded him while picking up vegetables, eat more slowly. Feng Guiu said, that's because mother and I have the same taste, and these are what I like to eat. Xiao Jinyan saw that she had finished eating a chicken leg in a short time. She would definitely accumulate food if she lay there motionless after eating. You should also eat more slowly. I know. Feng Guiu said this while eating meat without stopping. Xiao Jinyan was a little helpless. Susu suddenly raised her head from the bowl, puffed out her cheeks and said vaguely, it's all just bad. Dao Tao is not far behind, I love my family too. Feng Qingjian looked at her granddaughter and smiled, the babies are great. After Feng Guiu finished his dinner, he touched his belly and said, Jinyan, I have to leave. Xiao Jinyan asked, where are you going? Feng Guiu said, go to Su Qingqing's place. What are you doing at the general's mansion? Feng Guiu said shrewdly, Jinyan, don't you understand this? Should I give Su Qingqing a gift when she gets married and becomes a sister? When I give her away, I can have a banquet at the general's mansion first, and then go to my elder brother's place. Don't miss both sides of the banquet. Xiao Jinyan's face darkened, for a few bites of food, you let your husband stay alone in an empty room. Feng Guiu said, the banquet is not just for a few bites, but for dozens of dishes. Good night, Spicy. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 647. Feng Guiu almost said the name of the dish. Wedding banquets have the most dishes. You can eat dozens of dishes at one time, so why not? Xiao Jinyan has been married to Xiaoju for several years, and what she hears the most is that whenever there is a banquet, she must be taken with her. He is a living person, but he can't even join a banquet. It's just dozens of dishes, so what if you skip one meal? Feng Guiu said with a serious face, you don't understand, life is only a few decades, and you eat less every time, so you can't miss it once. Xiao Jinyan. Jinyan, you should rest early. I have to leave. I won't be able to get out because of the palace confinement. Feng Guiu happily put on her shoes and was about to call Chun 11 for help when she heard Xiao Jinyan calling her from behind, Xiaoju. She looked back behind her and saw Xiao Jinyan's gleaming phoenix eyes staring at her unblinkingly, is there anything else? Xiao Jinyan sat still and raised his fingers at her, come here. Feng Guiu, who had been hurt by Xiao Jinyan countless times, still didn't make much progress. He obediently leaned over and asked with a smile, what secret do you want to tell me? Before he finished speaking, Xiao Jinyan was hugged into his arms and his mouth was blocked. Feng Guiu was still thinking about leaving the palace early at first, but later she didn't remember anything except that Xiao Jinyan kept kissing her. Not only that, he didn't let her go, even begging for mercy was useless. Before Feng Wei fell asleep, she vaguely thought that there was something important that she hadn't done, but her brain didn't allow her to think too much and she just went on strike. Xiao Jinyan cleaned the two of them and lay on the bed, contentedly holding her to sleep. Early the next morning, Feng Wei was woken up by Xiao Jinyan. She rubbed her eyes. What? Xiao Jinyan didn't even open his eyes when he looked at her. Later, he realized that she had been through a lot of trouble last night. He reminded, "Today is my big brother's happy day." "Oh, a big day." Feng Wei muttered, then suddenly opened her eyes and saw Xiao Jinyan staring at her. "Aren't you going to have a banquet?" Xiao Jinyan. Still thinking about the banquet. Wait a minute. Feng Wei sat up and looked up at the window. The papered window was a little white, indicating that it was already dawn. Xiao Jinyan knew what was going on in his mind as soon as he saw her actions. "Stop looking." Feng Wei glared at Xiao Jinyan angrily. "It's all you who have caused a tiny flaw in my perfect life." "Xiao Jinyan, it's not that serious. It's just missing a meal." "You don't understand." Feng Wei's heart ached. Xiao Jinyan saw that she looked extremely wronged and could not bear to let her down. "Okay, it's still too late to go now." Feng Wei raised his head, a glimmer of hope igniting in his eyes. "Really?" Xiao Jinyan nodded. "You can get up now in time." "I'll get up now." Feng Wei quickly lifted the quilt and got out of bed. Xiao Jinyan did not let Chengzi come in to wait on her, but personally served Xiaju to change her clothes. Winter cotton clothes are a bit thick, but they still show off Xiaoju's waist. Thinking of last night, his eyes felt hot. Xiaju's purpose today was to eat, so she didn't dress up, which would affect her ability to cook. Xiao Jinyan knew that she was afraid of the cold, so she asked Chengzi to prepare a hand warmer in advance. Before going out, Xiao Jinyan got a fox fur coat and put it on for her. Feng Wei looked at the pair of figures in the mirror. This image often appeared in the mirror. Every time she took a look, she always felt that Xiao Jinyan was a bit tall. Coming out of the back room, Feng Wei didn't see Dao Tao and Susu. He raised his head and looked at Xiao Jinyan in confusion. "Where are the babies?" Xiao Jinyan said, "Father and mother took them to the eldest brother's wedding room in advance." "Oh, let's go then. It's too late to catch up." Xiao Jinyan had someone prepare the carriage in advance, and he could get on the carriage directly after leaving the door. There was a thick plush blanket inside the carriage, and I didn't feel cold at all while sitting on it. Xiao Jinyan glanced at Xiaoju and saw that she was smiling. Even without asking, he knew it was because his eldest brother married a sister and had a wedding banquet. When we arrived at the general's mansion, the banquet had not yet started and the bride had not yet left the palace. Feng Wei couldn't wait to go to Su Qingqing's boudoir. Having been there once, she was already familiar with the place. When the maids and mothers at the door saw Feng Wei coming, they all bowed and said, "Crown Princess." "Get up," Feng Wei said and walked in, and saw Su Qingqing in front of the dressing table, already putting on her wedding dress. Tao Min'er was standing next to her, talking to her. "The people I planned to come over last night were all your highness." Feng Wei complained as he walked over. Su Qingqing joked, "Is it because his highness doesn't want you to come out? Your highness probably didn't want to stay alone in the empty room, so." Tao Min'er showed a meaningful smile. As two people who have read N story books, they both have rich imaginations. Being guessed by the two of them, Feng Wei felt a little embarrassed at first, but then felt that he was not embarrassed at all. Instead, he said in the same tone, "You will know after you get married." Su Qingqing, who was about to leave the court, immediately turned red when she thought of the night of flowers and candles in the bridal chamber tonight. Tao Min'er's face turned red when she thought that tomorrow was the day of engagement. Feng Wei looked at the two people blushing at the same time, and said coquettishly, "Now you know you are blushing." Tao Min'er was so embarrassed that she simply changed the subject. "Princess, Did you come here alone? Feng Guo said, no, His Highness came here with me. He is chatting with the two generals now. Su Qingqing smiled and said, that's right, how can His Highness trust you to come alone? Feng Guo looked at Su Qingqing. She had just put on makeup and was wearing a red wedding dress. It was a little different from the past, but she looked very good. When my eldest brother lifts his hijab, I'm afraid he won't be able to look away. Su Qingqing looked at herself in the mirror embarrassedly. She would not dress up like this normally. The scar on her cheek had completely healed. How can it be so exaggerated? Feng Guo said with full confidence, if you don't believe it, wait until tonight to see. I'll bet on it. Su Qingqing thought of what Jun Wuxian said when she went to Nanzhao Kingdom before, and she really wanted to eat you in one bite. Tao Minor noticed that Su Qingqing's face was red and asked curiously, what is Qingqing thinking about? Her face is so red. How could Su Qingqing have the nerve to say such ambiguous words? She explained humbly, I didn't think anything of it. I am a bride today, so I am a little nervous. The three people didn't chat for long before the wedding banquet started. Feng Guo also went to the main hall to have a banquet. When she went there, Xiao Jinyan was already waiting for her in the corridor. Your Highness. Xiao Jinyan saw her smiling face and asked, so happy? Feng Guo said, of course, the eldest brother will be happy to marry his sister and have a banquet. Xiao Jinyan shook his head helplessly and took her to the table. Xiao Jinyan helped her pick up the food, and she was responsible for eating. When Feng Guo eats a dish that suits Xiao Jinyan's taste, she will put it in his mouth and say, Your Highness, you should try it too, this is delicious. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and glanced at the food on the chopsticks, opened his mouth to eat, chewed slowly, and found that it tasted really good. He looked at her and said, it's delicious. Feng Guo smiled happily and heard him say again, it's not as delicious as the one you made. Xiao Jinyan already had a bad appetite, but now his appetite is even worse. He likes to eat Xiaoju's delicious food the most. Feng Guo leaned into his ear and whispered, when you get back, I'll prepare something delicious for you. Xiao Jinyan, okay. This scene was seen by many people. At first, they questioned whether the prince's doting on the princess alone was a bit false. But now that they have seen it, they can't help but believe that the prince is a dedicated person. After the banquet, the story of the Prince Xiao Jinyan doting on the prince concubine was widely circulated, and the young girls in the boudoir longed for love, hoping to meet someone who could express love like the prince. Before the table was over, there was a sound on the door. The groom is here to pick up the bride. Feng Guo raised his head and saw Jun Wuxian, who was wearing a red wedding dress, standing tall and graceful, waiting for the bride to arrive. The master of ceremonies shouted, the auspicious time has come, the bride will get into the sedan chair. The bride was carried out by General Su. Feng Guo stopped eating and pulled Xiao Jinyan out. When she went out, the bride had already sat in Huajiao. General Su's wife stood at the door to say goodbye to the bride. The general's wife cried like a tearful person. Marrying a daughter with tears and marrying a wife with a smile seems to have not changed since ancient times. Jun Wuxian bid farewell to his two elders, then mounted his tall horse and left the general's palace with the wedding procession. The wedding team couldn't turn back, so Jun Wuxian led the wedding team around in a circle before arriving at the wedding room. At this time, Xiao Jinyan had already brought Xiaoju to the wedding room. Dao Tao and Susu were playing in the garden, accompanied by Jun Mocking and Feng Qingjian. Not long after they entered, the escort team had already arrived at the door. Dao Tao and Susu gathered around happily. Jun Wuxian came to the sedan, opened the curtain, and stretched out his hand in front of Su Qingqing, Qingqing, get off the sedan. Su Qingqing put her slender fingers into Jun Wuxian's hand. The nervousness she had felt along the way disappeared. She held the generous hand and walked out of the sedan. June Mocking and Feng Qingjian were already sitting in the high hall, waiting for the newlyweds to salute. Feng Wei watched Jun Wuxian and Su Qingqing pay their respects to the court, and he thought of the scene when she and Xiao Jinyan got married, with the MC shouting loudly to complete the process. She raised her head to look at Xiao Jinyan and found that he was looking down at her. "Why are you staring at me?" Xiao Jinyan didn't answer but asked, "What about you?" Feng Wei didn't hide it. "I thought about the time when we got married." Xiao Jinyan said, "Me too. Send it to the bridal chamber." Feng Wei heard the sound and looked over, only to see Jun Wuxian leading Su Qingqing into the bridal chamber. In fact, it's still early before the wedding, and the groom has to go out to drink. The banquet officially started at this time. "Your Highness, let's go have a banquet." Feng Wei pulled Xiao Jinyan to sit down. "Xiao Jinyan, I just ate and want to eat again." He glanced at Xiaoju's belly. He didn't know how such a small belly could hold so much food. At this time in the bridal chamber, Jun Wuxian sat on the bed with Su Qingqing. Before he could speak, someone shouted from outside the door. "Groom, come out quickly and let's drink together." "That's right, today is a big day, and the groom can't help but drink." Jun Wuxian glanced back and saw that they were all good friends. He looked away and saw the auspicious red hijab with dragons and phoenixes. He picked up the happy title beside him and raised the red hijab. Under the red hijab, there was a face carved with pink and jade. She looked up at him shyly and then immediately lowered her eyes. Jun Wuxian hadn't seen her for a long time, and found that her face had completely healed, and suddenly understood why she refused to see her these days. "If you are hungry, ask Caixia to get you something to eat, and I will try to come back as early as possible." Su Qingqing nervously clenched the red handkerchief in her hand and nodded, "Well, I'll wait for you." Well, Jun Wuxian stood up straight and turned to leave the wedding room. After the people left, Su Qingqing raised her head and looked at her wedding room. This house was newly bought, and the wedding room was also newly decorated, and it was decorated by Jun Wuxian himself, and she liked it more and more. Caixia smiled and said, "Miss, are you hungry? I'll go get you something to eat." Su Qingqing nodded vigorously, "Well, I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten since morning. I'll go right away." Caixia opened the door and walked out. Su Qingqing didn't wait long before Caixia came in with the food. "Miss, these are specially prepared by the son-in-law, and they are all Mrs. favorites," Caixia said and placed the food on the table one by one. Su Qingqing smelled the fragrance of the food, and couldn't wait to stand up, holding up her skirt and walked over to sit down at the table. Caixia said with a smile, "My son-in-law is so considerate." "Of course, how can the man I chose be bad?" Su Qingqing proudly picked up the chopsticks and put the food into her mouth to eat. After eating and drinking, Su Qingqing walked around the wedding room twice and felt a little bored. She looked up at Caixia, "When will the banquet end?" Caixia comforted, "Miss, the banquet will have to wait, and my son-in-law should be here soon." Su Qingqing was busy all day today, and she felt a little sleepy while waiting. But Jun Wuxian hadn't come back yet. She could only force herself to be energetic. Finally, Jun Wuxian pushed the door open and came in. Caixia saw this and left, and asked someone to prepare water for washing. Su Qingqing looked at Jun Wuxian, watching him in a bright red wedding suit, slowly walking towards her, and suddenly became a little nervous. Jun Wuxian came to the bed and sat down, staring at Su Qingqing without blinking. "I've kept you waiting for a long time." Su Qingqing lowered her eyes shyly, "I didn't wait long." Caixia came in and reminded, "Sir, miss, you can wash up. Let's drink the wedding wine first." Jun Wuxian pulled Su Qingqing to stand up and came to the table, where there were 2 wine glasses. He picked up the wine pot and filled the wine glasses, handed one to Su Qingqing, and took the other for himself. When drinking the wedding wine, Su Qingqing drank with a red face because she was a little short. After everything was done, Caixia waved away everyone, followed her out, and then closed the door. Su Qingqing raised her head and looked at Jun Wuxian, and he picked her up and strode towards the bed. Jun Wuxian has been following Jun Mocking for many years, and he has been pure and unselfish, so he has not married at the age of 30. Fortunately, he married a wife before the age of 31, which made him, who was once pure and unselfish, become a little anxious. When he and Su Qingqing were alone on the road, he had that thought. He had waited until today, the day of the formal marriage. Su Qingqing was laid flat on the red bed by him, and watched him press down, staring at her with dark eyes for a long time. "You look so beautiful today. Good night." The new book will be published tomorrow night, which is Monday morning. It may also be Monday daytime. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 648. Jun Wuxian's slender fingers stroked Su Qingqing's fair cheek. In fact, it didn't matter to him whether she had scars or not, but she looked really good in her bright red wedding dress today. Before this, he had imagined her wearing a wedding dress many times, but none of them looked as good as she did now. It was not the first time that Su Qingqing and Jun Wuxian lay on the bed in this position. That time, they also did intimate things in this way, and they were just right. He didn't do anything too outrageous. But thinking of what happened next, her face turned red. "You are trying to make me happy, right?" Jun Wuxian chuckled, "Of course it's the truth. I don't care to say it against my will." Su Qingqing was very happy. The wait these days was not in vain. "How much did you drink today?" "Not much, it won't affect the wedding night," Jun Wuxian said as he untied her red waist belt with pearls. Su Qingqing was shy and nervous when she heard this, but she was also a little expectant. She liked Jun Wuxian, liked his kiss, and liked the different feelings he brought her even more. Jun Wuxian called out softly, "Qingqing." Su Qingqing looked up at the man so close. What's wrong?" Jun Wuxian lowered his head and kissed her lips. "Are you scared?" Su Qingqing didn't know whether to shake her head or nod, because she was afraid and not afraid. "Xian. Don't be afraid," Jun Wuxian said gently, lowering his head and continuing to kiss her. At first Su Qingqing was a little nervous, but later the nervousness was calmed by Jun Wuxian, and she was looking forward to it. Su Qingqing was a little tired and sleepy, but the man next to her was energetic and was playing with her hands, with no intention of letting her sleep. Jun Wuxian whispered in her ear, "Qingqing." Su Qingqing snuggled in his arms, raised her head and looked at the handsome face. "What's wrong?" Jun Wuxian looked at the white and slender arms in front of him, and said softly, "Your toad sand is gone." Su Qingqing was stunned for a moment, followed his gaze, and saw that her arms were white and slender, without any flaws. She looked up at Jun Wuxian in confusion. "When did you notice the Shaogong sand?" Not every woman would notice the Shaogong sand, and the Shaogong sand is so small, and his attention is not on it. How did he find out that she had it and didn't have it? Jun Wuxian said, "I found it 3 years ago." Su Qingqing was stunned again. 3 years ago? 3 years ago, our relationship was not even friends. How did you see it? She seemed to think of something, and suddenly opened her eyes wide. "You peeked at me bathing, right?" "You must have peeked, otherwise how would you know?" "I didn't see it. You still have a voyeurism habit. Did you also peek at other women bathing?" Jun Wuxian looked at her like this and couldn't help laughing. "What are you laughing at? You didn't really peek at other women bathing?" "I didn't expect you to be this kind of person." Su Qingqing stared at him angrily. Jun Wuxian held back his laughter and hugged her again. "You were so gentle before, Were you pretending? Before, Su Qingqing spoke softly, and he would blush when he saw her. He felt that Su Qingqing had changed into a different person. The Su Qingqing now was the real Su Qingqing. Su Qingqing snorted, "How am I pretending? I've always been like this. Don't change the subject. Tell me, did you peek at others bathing?" Jun Wuxian explained, "I didn't watch others bathing. When I came to see you, you were bathing. I saw it by accident, but I left after taking a look." "That's more like it." Su Qingqing felt better. "Now that we're married, I don't mind you peeking at me." Jun Wuxian asked hoarsely, "Qingqing, are you ready to rest?" Su Qingqing raised her head in confusion and was kissed by Jun Wuxian. Only later did she understand the meaning of his words. Jun Mocking and Feng Qingjian returned to the East Palace and went to the side hall where Jun Mocking lived. Feng Qingjian took Jun Mocking's arm and sat down on the couch. "Now the children have started families." Jun Mocking nodded. "Well, Wuxian, I thought." Feng Qingjian curiously asked, "What did you think?" Jun Mocking said, "I thought he liked men, so he hadn't married at the age of 30. Feng Qingjian: "You really said that? He's so old, you never mentioned it?" Jun Mocking said, "Do I need to mention it about getting married?" Feng Qingjian knew Jun Mocking too well. "You are pure and unselfish, isn't your son following you? If you don't say it, he will think that being pure and unselfish is normal." Jun Mocking: "Is this also learning from me? It's not kung fu." "Then have you mentioned it?" "No." Jun Mocking felt that he didn't need to be reminded by others about getting married. "No one reminded me, but you still got married." Feng Qingjian couldn't help rolling her eyes. "If I hadn't pestered you, you would still be a single dog." Jun Mocking: "It seems possible." Feng Qingjian said, "How dare you say that?" Jun Mocking thought for a while and said, "That means I like you." Feng Qingjian's eyebrows curved with joy when she heard it. "That's more like it. It's worth it that I've been chasing you for so long. Even if you're a piece of wood, you should be moved." Jun Mocking lowered his eyes and looked at her. "Yeah, I am indeed moved." Feng Qingjian realized something was wrong, looked down, and found a hand pulling her belt. Who else could it be except Jun Mocking? "What are you doing?" Jun Mocking raised his eyes to look at her. "You didn't say it just now." Feng Qingjian: "What did you say? How come I don't know?" She held the restless hand. "Fortunately, Wuxian got married, and you are not a competent father at all." "Yeah, you are right." Jun Mocking changed his hand. Feng Qingjian looked down at the other hand pulling her belt again. If Jun Mocking had this awareness before, why did she chase him for so long? Jun Mocking was really abstinent before, as if the things in the world had nothing to do with him. She couldn't even flirt with him. Asterisk. Feng Wu was full today, lying on the couch without moving. Xiao Jinyan came over and saw her bulging belly, reached out and touched it through her clothes. "It looks a bit like a 3 or 4-month belly." "Really?" Feng Wu raised her head and took a look at her belly, which was bulging, and it did look a bit like it. She smiled and joked, "What do you think if you give birth to another pair of sons?" Xiao Jinyan said, "Of course it's good, but you will suffer." Feng Wu smiled and said, "I'm kidding. How can it be so easy to conceive 2 sons?" Xiao Jinyan nodded, "That's true. A pair of twins is already a happy thing. I don't expect more." Feng Wu touched her belly and said, "I have to go to bed quickly to digest my stomach. I have to make room for Minus engagement banquet tomorrow." Xiao Jinyan: "I really can't forget to eat at any time. The engagement banquet is relatively simple, without complicated things and processes." Feng Wu followed Xiao Jinyan to the Tao mansion early in the morning. The Tao family has never had a royal family come in this life. Now not only did they come, but they were also the matchmaker for their daughter. There are quite a few people who come to watch the fun. One of the reasons is that Tao Minor is a big girl, but she is favored by Song Tanhua, which is really shocking. Tao Minor got up early today and sat in front of the dressing table to be dressed by Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang looked at her own lady and could clearly see that she was happier than last time. The young lady has changed a lot. Really, Tao Minor looked in the mirror. Ding Xiang said, I thought the young lady would not come out after entering the palace, but I didn't expect her to come out. I didn't expect it either. Tao Minor thought about the situation when she entered the palace. She could enter the palace with expectations. But after entering the palace, she found that it was far different from what she imagined. Fortunately, she learned a lot from the crown princess. One of them is that timely stop-loss is the most important thing. She continued to stay in the palace and wasted time. It would be better to leave the palace, so that there would be a better way to live and a better way out. So her decision was not wrong. Don't blame His Highness for being so devoted to the crown princess. If I were a man, I would like her too. Feng Guiu heard this when she came. She walked over with a smile. How about I take you to the harem? Tao Minor looked up with some surprise. Crown Princess, you are here. I'm afraid that His Highness's 40-meter sword will swing at me without hesitation. Tao Minor, who has read so many storybooks, naturally knows what Feng Guiu means by the harem. Feng Guiu touched his chin. What you said seems to make sense. Am I late? Feng Guiu and Tao Minor looked at the door after hearing this, only to see Su Qingqing holding her waist and walking in step by step, her legs still shaking a little. Tao Minor deliberately asked, Hey, what's wrong? Su Qingqing knew that Tao Minor was asking deliberately. What a joke, they had read so many storybooks together, and had long gone from being a simple little white flower to a little yellow flower. What was unclear? I understood it even if I didn't understand it. What else can I do? You'll understand it after you get married. You can't run away. Finally, Su Qingqing added another sentence. Tao Minor blushed. I'm not married yet. Su Qingqing said, it will be soon. You will soon experience the feeling of not being able to sleep at night and getting up in the morning. Feng Guiu smiled and said, Sister-in-law, it seems that you have a deep understanding of it. Su Qingqing blushed and said, You are still talking about me, don't you have a deeper understanding of it? Feng Guiu raised his chin. What do you know? Now the prince listens to me. If I say go to bed, he will never stop me and fall asleep immediately. If it was before, Su Qingqing might have believed it, but now that she is married, she is not so easy to fool. Really? Is the prince so easy to talk to? Feng Guiu smiled proudly. Of course. She fell asleep naturally because she was too tired, and Xiao Jinyan's tossing and turning would not help. Tao Minor also remained skeptical. Feng Guiu asked, Where is my elder brother? Su Qingqing said, He is chatting with the prince outside. Then the two began to look at Tao Minor again. By the way, have you prepared your wedding dress? Tao Minor said, It's already been prepared. It can be done before the wedding. Feng Guiu sighed, Soon, when we get together again, it will be a gathering of young women, saying goodbye to young girls. Su Qingqing also sighed, Yes, we can talk about topics that young women should talk about. Tao Minor was curious and puzzled. What topics should young women talk about? Su Qingqing said, Of course, topics that adults should talk about. Feng Guiu said, I think it may be a topic that mothers should talk about. Su Qingqing and Tao Minor looked at Feng Guiu together, and suddenly realized that they could have a baby after getting married. As a wealthy businessman, the Tao family has many relatives and friends, and even the engagement banquet has several tables. Feng Guiu ate the dishes while praising, The Tao family is really rich. Look at this dish, look at this soup. Xiao Jinyan glanced at the dishes in front of him. Didn't you eat them all yesterday? Feng Guiu chuckled, It doesn't matter, what's important is that I ate them again. Xiao Jinyan. Song Tanhua has been busy with the betrothal gifts these days, and he is free today. After the engagement, he was about to ask Tao Minor to go to Kainyuan to appreciate plum blossoms, but Tao Minor spoke first. Tao Minor blushed and asked, "How about going to Kainyuan to appreciate plum blossoms together tomorrow?" Song Tanhua said, "That's what I was thinking." Tao Minor smiled happily, "Aren't you busy tomorrow?" Song Tanhua said, "The little grandson is very smart, and the crown princess doesn't want the little grandson to study every day. It's almost the end of the year, and His Highness sympathizes with me and approved a long vacation. He still needs to prepare for the wedding, and the vacation will last until the third day after the wedding." Tao Minor said, "That's good." Asterisk. Today is the first date between Tao Minor and Song Tanhua. Tao Minor dressed up specially. When she went out, she was surprised to see Song Tanhua standing at the door. "I thought we would meet at the gate of Kainyuan." Song Tanhua said gently, "How could I let you go alone?" Tao Minor felt a little strange. Song Tanhua had never been so proactive or thoughtful before. Song Tanhua is a scholar. Although he is not pedantic, he is also a scholar, not a romantic person. He made an appointment to appreciate plum blossoms and came to pick her up in advance, just like the domineering president or gentleman in the storybook. Tao Minor got on the carriage with doubts. This place is not far from Kainyuan, and the carriage arrived soon. Song Tanhua got off the carriage first, then stood aside and reached out to help her. Tao Minor naturally put her hand on his hand and got off the carriage. It snowed for 2 days in a row, and Kainyuan was covered with white snow. Only the red plum blossoms were seen blooming in the snow. Tao Minor had never seen such beautiful red plum blossoms that bloomed in the snow, and it seemed as if she could hear the sound of flowers blooming. Song Tanhua stood beside her, admiring the red plum blossoms in the snow. If it were usual, he would definitely recite 2 poems. Now, he did not recite poems, but simply accompanied Tao Minor to appreciate the plum blossoms. When they came out, their cheeks were already red from the cold. On the street, an old man was carrying a candied haws, shouting as he walked, "Candied haws, if it's not sweet, no money." Song Tanhua looked over and saw the bunches of red candied haws, lowered his eyes and looked at Tao Minor, "Wait here for a while, I'll be back soon." Tao Minor nodded, "Okay." She watched Song Tanhua walk across the street and stop in front of the candied haw seller. When he came back, he had an extra bunch of candied haws in his hand. "Here you go." Tao Minor looked at the candied haws in front of her, happily took it, put it to her mouth and bit one, then passed it to him, puffed her cheeks and said, "You have one too. Good night. My dears, I'll post something on Monday. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 649. Song Tanhua's warm eyes glanced at the candied haws in front of her, and then looked at Tao Minor, only to see her bulging cheeks and a smile on her face. Eating the same bunch of candied haws on the street is indeed a test of worldly vision. Song Tanhua hesitated for a while, then opened her mouth and bit into the top candied haws, her cheeks immediately puffed up. Tao Minor couldn't help laughing when she saw it. "How does it taste?" Song Tanhua chewed a few mouthfuls slowly and said, "It's very sweet, but also very sour." Tao Minor said, "The crown princess said that falling in love feels like eating candied haws." Song Tanhua, who had never been in love, didn't understand the meaning of the sentence. "Yeah." Tao Minor nodded and added, "It's like eating ice cream." Song Tanhua was lucky enough to have eaten ice cream, but she still didn't understand what the relationship had between falling in love and the taste of ice cream. Tao Minor knew that he didn't understand, so she smiled and said, "The wedding is very close, you must be very busy, let's go back." Song Tanhua nodded, "Okay." Asterisk. Lu Zayan knew that Wei Qi was avoiding him, but he couldn't understand why Wei Qi was avoiding him. He didn't seem to have the habit of talking nonsense when he was drunk. Instead, he would just fall asleep. In order to catch Wei Qi and ask him clearly, Lu Zhayan stayed at the East Palace all day today. Of course, Xiao Jinyan would not let go of the free labor and gave Lu Zhayan everything he could save. This was not the first time that Lu Zhayan was treated as free labor by Xiao Jinyan, and he felt it necessary to make a small request. He raised his head to look at Xiao Jinyan and said with a smile, "Your Highness." Xiao Jinyan raised her eyes and glanced at him. "What's the matter?" Lu Zhayan thought for a while, then bravely said, "Your Highness, I have been working here for a day, and I have a small request." "Xiao Jinyan, tell me and listen." Lu Zhayan said, "Your Highness, I haven't seen the guards for a while." Xiao Jinyan said thoughtfully, "It turns out I missed Wei Qi. I asked him to come over." Lu Zhayan hurriedly explained, "No, Your Highness, it's not that Wei Chen wants to protect the guards, but there was a small misunderstanding between Wei Chen and the guards some time ago." He looked at Xiao Jinyan expectantly. "Do you understand, Your Highness?" Xiao Jinyan raised his eyebrows and said, "Understood, I will make arrangements for you." Lu Zhayan secretly breathed a sigh of relief, then "Thank you, Your Highness." "Xiao Jinyan, Master Lu, you're welcome." After Lu Zhayan finished his work, Xiao Jinyan asked him to go to Miwen, and he went without saying anything. The plum garden is not far from the study, just a short walk away. Xiao Jinyan called Qin Xiao over, "Tell Wei Qi to go to Miwen." "I obey my orders." Qin Xiao rushed to find Wei Qi. At this time, Wei Qi had just returned from outside when he was intercepted by Qin Xiao, who was coming towards him. "Brother, the master wants you to go to the plum garden." "Okay, I'll go right away." The guard rushed to Miwen without stopping. When he arrived at Miwen, he was a little confused. What did His Highness want to do in Miwen? Just when Wei Qi was confused, he suddenly discovered that there was someone else in Miwen, and that person was obviously not well-intentioned and was sneaking closer. Fortunately, he knows martial arts and can hear subtle noises that ordinary people cannot hear. As the man approached, Wei Qi suddenly grabbed the man's shoulder, held his arm, and then twisted him behind him, pushing him against the wall. The whole set of movements is done in one go, fast and accurate. Just the next second, I heard a scream, "Ah! It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Wei Qi let out a sigh in his heart. This voice was so familiar. He looked down at the man who was pressed against the wall. The light here was very dark and his face could not be seen. He tentatively shouted, "Are you?" Lu Zhayan, a civil servant, was so painful that he uttered a sentence for a long time. It's me, brother Wei, it's me." Wei Qi heard clearly now, "Master Lu." After he came to his senses, he quickly let go of Lu Zhayan. Lu Zhayan's whole body trembled in pain, his legs went weak and he couldn't help but slide down. When Wei Qi saw this, he quickly held his arms and lifted him up. Although Lu Zhayan looks thin, he is actually a bit voluptuous. "You are a civil servant, why do you want to make a sneak attack? It's better now, but this hand won't be healed for more than 10 days. Lu Zhayan looked innocent. "How could I have made a sneak attack?" Wei Qi said, "It's not a sneak attack. Are you approaching me sneakily? I won't regard you as a bad person." Lu Zhayan exclaimed, "It hurts," he explained, "it's such a cold day and it's snowing again. I don't want to walk slower. What if I slip and fall?" Wei Qi was speechless after hearing this. Indeed, for a weak person like Lu Zhayan, a fall would be serious. He asked with some concern, "Is your hand okay?" Lu Zhayan covered his arm and gritted his teeth in pain. "Don't you know your own strength?" Wei Qi said a little guiltily, "I didn't mean it. Should I ask the imperial doctor to take a look at it for you?" Lu Zhayan grunted in pain, "You help me back first, it hurts me to death." Wei Qi has a guilty conscience, how can he dare to say no? "Okay," he said and helped Lu Zhayan back to his residence. Then he asked someone to ask for the imperial doctor. After the imperial doctor came to check, Wei Qi couldn't wait to ask, "Imperial doctor, is Mr. Lu's hand okay?" The imperial doctor sighed, "Master Lu can't hold a pen these days. He will be fine if he rests for a while." After hearing this, Wei Qi felt guilty again. He sent the imperial physician away and returned to the bed. He stared at Lu Zhan's almost useless hand and asked carefully, "Lord Lu, what do you say we should do?" "What do you say we should do?" Lu Zhan groaned twice again, "It hurts." Wei Qi scratched his head, not knowing what to do. He suddenly raised his head, "Why would Lord Lu go to the plum garden?" Lu Zhan answered confidently, "Your Highness asked me to go." "My master also asked me to go." Wei Qi was obviously not confident enough, and he was guilty. Lu Zhan stared at Wei Qi for a long time. "Why have you been avoiding me during this period? How did I offend you?" Wei Qi smiled guiltily, "Lord Lu, what are you talking about? How could I avoid you? I've been very busy recently and didn't see Lord Lu come to the East Palace." Lu Zhan snorted and continued to pretend. Lu Zhan asked, "I was drunk that night, did I vomit on you?" Wei Qi nodded, "Yes, what's wrong?" Lu Zhan said, "Then you are too stingy. I didn't vomit on you on purpose. If you hadn't forced me to drink, would I have gotten drunk?" Wei Qi also said dissatisfiedly, "Then you lied to me." Lu Zhan asked back, "What did I lie to you about? Did I cheat you of money?" "No." Wei Qi snorted, "You know it in your heart." Lu Zhan was frightened by the sentence, not to mention that he was indeed a little guilty in his heart, because he didn't lie to Wei Qi about the marriage calculation for him, he just didn't tell the truth. "What do I know in my heart?" Wei Qi stood straight, staring at Lu Zhan without blinking, as if he wanted to stare a hole in him. "Keep pretending." Lu Zhan couldn't stand being stared at, and sighed helplessly, "Forget it, isn't it just that I didn't tell you the truth? Why are you so angry?" "It matters a lot." Wei Qi thought about the past few years that he thought he was not good enough, and he was depressed for a long time. Lu Zhan explained, "I didn't tell you the truth, and it was also to prevent you from having a burden. If I told you that there was a possibility in that aspect, you would focus on it. Over time, you would be curious and interested, and then there would be no hope. Then do you know how I have lived and thought in the past few years? Forget it, you don't understand even if I tell you, and you continue to lie to me." Wei Qi paced back and forth angrily. Seeing Wei Qi so angry, Lu Zhan had to admit his mistake first. My fault, I shouldn't have told you the truth at the beginning." Wei Qi felt better after hearing this, but when he thought of the name on the hexagram, he was worried again. Seeing him lower his head and keep silent, Lu Zhan asked, "What's wrong? Are you still angry?" Wei Qi raised his head and looked at Lu Zhan, only to see that he was looking at him with his red eyes, which were like little rabbits. He cried in pain just now, and it was also his fault that he had treated Lu Zhan as a bad guy just now. He knew exactly how much strength he had used. "I'm not angry." Lu Zhan smiled and said, "It's good not to be angry. It's not worth getting sick from anger." "Wei Qi?" Lu Zhan asked curiously, "By the way, now that you know, what do you think?" Wei Qi looked at Lu Zhan with a confused face. What idea?" Lu Zhan blinked twice and said meaningfully, "It's that kind of idea." Wei Qi was stunned for a moment, then reacted. He hesitated, "How should I know? How do I know what to think?" Lu Zhan smiled and comforted, "It's okay, take your time." Wei Qi stared at him with a puzzled look, "You don't seem to mind at all." Lu Zhan didn't understand. "Why should I mind? I'm talking about you, you should be the one who minds." Wei Qi was speechless for a moment. It seemed like that, but... Lu Zhan said, "Okay, I'm injured because of you, you have to help me tonight." Wei Qi asked, "Help you with what?" Lu Zhiyan said confidently, bathing, my hand is injured, I can't take off clothes, and I can't take a bath, I need someone with strong strength to help, right? You hurt me so much, who will serve you? Wei Qi felt guilty and didn't feel embarrassed to refuse. Okay. In fact, this is not the first time Wei Qi has served Lu Zhiyan in bathing. Last time Lu Zhiyan was drunk, he also served him. It's actually very simple. It's just that this time, Wei Qi found something different from the last time. What's the difference? The first is that Lu Zhiyan was drunk last time, but not this time. The second is that Lu Zhiyan was not injured last time, but this time he was injured. The third one is that no matter how he fiddled with Lu Zhiyan last time, he didn't react. But this time, he just touched his arm lightly, and it hurt him so much that he cried for his father and mother. The weak scholar is just like Lu Zhiyan. Wei Qi, a rough man who knows Kung Fu, really can't take care of this delicate body. However, he is to blame for Lu Zhiyan's injury. He can only be patient and careful. This year's New Year's Eve is the happiest New Year's Eve for Feng Wu, because her father and mother are there. It's the first time she has spent New Year's Eve with her mother. Mom, can we set off fireworks together? Feng Wu is only 20 years old. She has lived in modern times, and she is actually no different from an older child. Feng Qingjian is naturally very happy to set off fireworks with Xiaju, okay. Feng Wu took out the fairy wand that she had taken out from the space in advance, and asked Xiao Jinyan to light it. Then he happily handed it to Feng Qingjian, Mom, this is the fairy wand. Feng Qingjian held a fairy wand in one hand and looked at her daughter with a smile, Xiaju, these fireworks are so beautiful. Feng Wu also held a fairy wand in one hand and looked at Feng Qingqing with a smile. At this time, Dao Tao and Su Su each held a lit fairy stick and jumped up and down with joy. Xiao Jinyan looked at Xiaju and his son and daughter, and saw how happy they were, and he felt more satisfied than ever before. Feng Wu looked at her father holding his mother's shoulders with one hand and holding a fairy wand in the other hand, which was shaped like a heart. It would be great if I had a camera so I could save the footage. Xiao Jinyan heard this and asked curiously, what is a camera? Feng Wu smiled and asked, are the paintings I drew very realistic? Xiao Jinyan nodded. Feng Wu continued, then the photos taken by the camera are more realistic than the paintings I drew, and they are just like the real thing. Xiao Jinyan felt that Xiaoju's paintings were realistic enough, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes, so powerful. Of course, there are many, many things you don't know. This is the modern, peaceful era, and there are many things you can't even imagine. For example, people can fly in the sky without using light skills, and it is the same means of transportation as a horse-drawn carriage. Feng Wu said it vividly, which made Xiao Jinyan very curious. What kind of modern world was Xiaju living in? If you have the chance, you must go and take a look. Dao Tao suddenly raised her head and looked at Feng Wu, and said in a sweet voice, Concubine, what is flying in the sky? Feng Wu explained, it's a plane. It's a very big plane. It can carry more than one person. It's very fast. Where a carriage takes a month or two to arrive, a plane can arrive in a few hours. When Dao Tao heard this, she immediately said, I want a plane. Feng Wu laughed out loud, flights are not cheap. Xiao Jinyan became even more curious when he heard that it could take more than 100 people, which was faster and more convenient than a carriage. Is it expensive? Feng Wu said, of course, but there are private planes, which are smaller and not so expensive. Xiao Jinyan wanted to imagine it, but he couldn't imagine it because he had never seen it. Hearing what you say makes me wonder what a plane looks like. Feng Wu saw through Xiao Jinyan's thoughts at a glance, I think you want to buy it. Xiao Jinyan did not deny it, if there is, I would naturally want to buy it. Feng Wu said, however, it is indeed much more convenient to have an airplane. Of course, Modern times not only have airplanes, but also high-speed trains, which are also much faster than horse-drawn carriages. Xiao Jinyan asked like a curious baby, is it as big as a carriage? Feng Guiu said, it's bigger than a carriage. It won't be a problem to accommodate hundreds of people. The transportation is very convenient. You don't have to take a carriage for half a month. It only takes a few hours. Ever since Feng Guiu mentioned this, Xiao Jinyan would often ask her about modern things. At this time, in Fenji Palace, the emperor pulled the queen and wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. Queen, I want to tell you something seriously this time. The new book has become popular, so you can go read it. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 650. The queen was extremely sleepy, and when she saw the dog emperor looking energetic and serious, she said she wasn't sleepy, so she wasn't allowed to sleep. She is too lazy to stay up late. What the emperor wants to say, I am listening to you. The emperor looked very serious and was a little dissatisfied when he saw the queen being so perfunctory. You come to my arms first. The queen couldn't help but roll her eyes. She didn't know what she was doing at night. She propped up her lazy body and moved to the dog emperor. After moving to his side, she raised her head and looked at the dog emperor. Your Majesty, are you okay with this? The emperor stretched out his arm, clasped the queen's shoulders, and brought her into his arms. Queen. Did the dog emperor take medicine again today? The emperor then called out with satisfaction, Ling-er. The queen simply retracted her body into the emperor's arms and pulled the quilt together. She discovered that every time the dog emperor called her Ling-er, his tone was different from when he called the queen. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she always felt that he was calling Ling-er with an imperceptible tenderness. My concubine is here. The emperor looked down at the person in his arms and said slowly, when the first lunar month comes, I will take you to Lingnan to stay for a while. The climate in Lingnan is much warmer than that in Beijing, making it a good place to escape the cold. The queen raised her head and looked at the dog emperor again. Going to Lingnan? Is the emperor free? Don't be deceiving me again. The emperor paused after hearing this, and suddenly thought of how many years ago, he said he wanted to take Ling-er to Lingnan to stay for a while, but he couldn't go because he was too busy. Ling-er was angry and ignored him for 3 days. It took him a long time to coax her, and he promised her that he would take her to stay for a while if he had the chance. It's just that as the king of a country, he has many things to do every day, so he doesn't have so much free time. A promise, so many years late. It's true this time, because on the 8th day of the first lunar month, I plan to abdicate and let Yanner inherit the throne. The queen was stunned for a long time after hearing this. Is the emperor really planning to abdicate? The emperor said seriously, the edict has been drawn up, how can it be false? The queen still couldn't believe it. Is she really abdicating? Then wouldn't she be able to call the dog emperor no longer? After so many years of scolding the dog emperor, I am used to it, but I am really not used to him suddenly changing his tune. The emperor said, well, really, haven't you always wanted to go out for a walk? Let's go for a walk while we are still in good health. Only then did the queen really believe it. Thinking of the emperor taking her out for fun, she couldn't help but start to look forward to it. I naturally support the emperor's decision, but I am afraid that the ministers will have something to say. The emperor said, when the time comes I will complain that I am not feeling well, and there is nothing they can do about it. Besides, the prince's abilities are obvious to all, and he will definitely be better than his master. The queen nodded, the prince is indeed very capable. After the emperor finished his announcement, he stared at her seriously, Ling-er, do you have something to say to me? The queen blinked and asked doubtfully, what does the emperor want to hear? The emperor was a little dissatisfied, don't you have anything to say? The queen thought for a moment and said, I am very happy. The emperor asked, what else? The queen thought for a while and then said, I am very happy. Emperor. That's it? The emperor couldn't help but ask, Ling-er, don't you think I'm the same as before? The queen looked at the dog emperor up and down. How could it be the same? The emperor is in his 40s this year. When the concubine and the emperor got married, the emperor was only 19 years old. He had no crow's feet, a strong figure, bright eyes, and a heroic appearance when riding a horse. Although the emperor's figure is well maintained, he is still a little fatter than he was then. The emperor's face darkened. The queen felt that what she said was very tactful. She thought that what the dog emperor said at the beginning was very unpleasant. The emperor was silent for a long time before asking, Ling-er thinks I'm old. The queen comforted her and said, Your Majesty, we are all grandparents, aren't we getting old? Didn't you also despise me as a little girl who is not as good as a teenager? Isn't that better than a little girl who is a teenager? The emperor expressed doubts. Did I say that? Impossible, how could I compare you with others? The emperor said it, and I heard it clearly. The queen cleared her throat and told the dog emperor exactly what the dog emperor said that day. Does your Majesty still remember? The emperor thought about it carefully and finally remembered. He hugged the queen into his arms again and explained in a coaxing tone, Ling-er, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean it that way. The queen looked at the dog emperor with a half smile. What do you mean, your Majesty? The emperor explained, I mean, time flies so fast. I was only 15 when I got married. You were still an innocent girl. After spending so many years with me, I changed from a girl to an older woman. The years have not only leaving traces on the face also proves that it is not easy to love and support each other until now. The queen expressed doubt, are you sure you meant what you said back then? Just because I am stupid doesn't mean I am stupid. The emperor continued to explain, if I despise that your lips are not as delicate as those of a teenager, how come I kiss you every time I get close to you? If I despise you for gaining weight, why do I hold you to sleep every time? If so, I dislike you for having crow's feet, so why do I stare at you every time? If I really dislike you, why can't I control you? I haven't checked other people's names for several years, so I come to your Fenji palace whenever I have time. The queen was stunned for a long time after hearing this. When the emperor said this, it seemed that it was true. The dog emperor said that day that she had crow's feet and her skin was not delicate, but that hand kept touching her face. He said that the color of her lips was not as delicate as that of a teenager, and after saying that, he lowered his head and kissed her. Did she wrongly blame the dog emperor? Concubine, I will take what you say as true. The emperor couldn't help but raise his voice, what do you think is true? It is true. The queen hugged the dog emperor's waist and said, I know, the emperor doesn't dislike me, it's just that I'm overthinking it. Only then did the excited dog emperor calm down. After saying this, the emperor and the queen rested. But the emperor always felt something was wrong. Shouldn't it be a very shocking and exciting thing for him to abdicate and take her out to play? Why is Ling-er so calm? No surprise at all. The emperor turned his head to look at the person beside the pillow and found that Ling-er was already asleep. Why was it different from what he imagined? It wasn't until the second day that he realized something was wrong. New Year's Day. Dao Tao Susu came to visit her in new clothes early in the morning, and the queen played with her two babies for a while. After just a short snowball fight, she got tired and had to admit that she was getting old. The two little guys were very energetic and never tired. Susu ran over, took the queen's hand, and walked into the snow. Grandma Huang, let's play together. The queen looked at Susu's blushing face and said with a smile, Grandma Huang can't play anymore. Susu thought for a moment and then said, how about Grandma Huang, take a rest and play again. The queen smiled and nodded, of course. Susu then let go of the queen's hand and turned around to play with Guo 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 Guo. The queen looked at the three people in the snow. Time passed quickly. Dao Tao and Susu were both over 3 years old. Ling-er. The queen suddenly heard a familiar voice. She raised her head and saw Yechu walking slowly over. She stood up slowly, with surprise in her eyes. Brother Ye, are you back? Yechu walked to the queen and stopped, looking down at her intently, trying to find out the changes in her in the past 3 years. Well, I haven't seen you for 3 years, and you're still the same as before. The queen smiled when she heard this. Brother Ye is the same. After 3 years of not seeing each other, he has become younger. Yechu also laughed when he heard this. After laughing for a while, he asked, how are you doing? The queen said in a relaxed tone, I'm fine. Where is brother Ye? I'm fine too. Yechu paused here. How is he treating you? The queen knew who Yechu was referring to. She had heard this sentence several times. Almost every once in a while, Yechu would come and ask her, how does he treat you? She knew that Yechu was worried that Xiaoqi would not treat her well, that she would be wronged, and that she would cry. Over the years, Yechu has been afraid that Xiaoqi will betray her. Brother Ye, he treats me very well, you don't have to worry. Yechu paused when he heard this. Really? He didn't let you suffer? The queen said, of course, he has always treated me well, but due to his status, many things were done out of necessity. I was too naive before, thinking that as long as I really like him, even the emperor can do the same. It's just that after I stayed in this deep palace for so many years, I realized that many things are beyond my control, and I can't do it according to my own temper. The palace trapped him, and it trapped me. Yechu said, as long as you are willing, I can't trap you. The queen smiled and said, there is no point in being willing or unwilling. If your heart is trapped, even if you leave, it will be useless. When the emperor came, he happened to see the queen talking and laughing with a strange man. When he took a closer look, he discovered that the man was the man who lived in Fueo 3 years ago. 3 years have passed and he is still pestering Ling-er. Ling-er was smiling so happily. Could it be that she also had feelings for him? No wonder she wasn't surprised, or shocked at all last night. Instead, it was peaceful. Could it be that she knew Yechu would come to find her? I'm already a grandma, but still. The emperor strode over with a gloomy expression. Queen. When the queen saw the emperor coming, she stepped forward and said, Your Majesty. The emperor hugged the queen and brought her into his arms. Then he looked at Yechu, raised his eyebrows and said, Young Master Ye, this is a palace, not a Fueo residence. You can come and go as you please. Yechu said calmly, this is indeed not Fueo residence. Ling-er is like a master there and does not need to be bound by rules. It is different in the imperial palace, where all kinds of etiquette and rules are binding. The emperor frowned. Why are you here, Mr. Ye? Yechu looked at the queen. Of course I came to visit Ling-er. The emperor's face darkened a little more. He came to see the queen so blatantly, and then mouthed Ling-er. Is that what you called Ling-er? He used his arms hard to bring the queen into his arms again, raising his eyebrows and looking at Yechu, as if to prove that the queen is his. Don't even think about it. Ling-er has me, I don't need to worry about you, Mr. Ye. The queen raised her head and looked at the dog emperor. Are you trying to strangle me? The emperor ignored the accusation in the queen's eyes and still raised his eyebrows at the love rival in front of him. Yechu said, Ling-er and I have known each other for more than 40 years and have missed her for more than 40 years. It has become a habit. The emperor's eyes flashed with shock when he heard this. The man in front of him actually knew Ling-er earlier than he did. More than 40 years? He and Ling-er have not known each other for such a long time. The queen tugged on the dog emperor's sleeve and said, Your Majesty, I haven't seen my concubine and brother yet for 3 years. It's rare to see them today. The emperor said, the queen is right. We haven't seen old friends for 3 years. We should catch up with each other. However, the queen is my queen. It is not reasonable for her to meet with a man alone. I also know that Mr. Ye is the queen's friend. We naturally have a lot to talk about after 3 years. I just have nothing to do, so I accompany the queen. Queen. Yechu. Finally, the emperor ordered people to prepare wine and food, and the 3 of them sat at a table. For a moment, the 3 of them stared at each other. Susu ran over and pointed at the chicken leg on the plate, saying, Grandpa Emperor, I want a chicken leg. Okay, Grandpa Emperor, I'll pick it up for you right away. The emperor picked up the chopsticks, picked up the chicken leg and handed it to Susu. Susu happily took the chicken leg and smiled, thank you, Grandpa Emperor. After that, she couldn't wait to bring the chicken leg to her mouth and took a big bite. The queen looked at Susu's cute appearance and was happy and proud. This was her granddaughter. Brother Ye, do you still remember Susu? When you left, she was only 3 months old. Isn't she very cute? Yechu lowered his eyes and looked at Susu. She looked very cute and lovable. Thinking of 3 years ago, she was only 3 months old, and she has grown up so big in a blink of an eye. She is indeed very cute. Susu bit the chicken leg, raised her head and looked at Yechu, tilted her head and thought for a while, who are you? The queen has always regarded Yechu as a brother, so her generation is naturally the same as hers. Susu, you should call him uncle. Susu shouted, uncle. The pronunciation of the 2 words uncle was not accurate, and the voice was childish, which made people like it very much. After Susu shouted, she ran out with the chicken leg. Since the emperor came, the queen has not been as comfortable talking to Yechu as before. I'm afraid that if I say it, the emperor will misunderstand. When Yechu left, the queen actually had a lot to say. For example, Brother Ye has been single for so long, it's time to consider personal problems. For another example, Brother Ye, have you seen Susu and Dao Tao? Cute, right? You should also find a wife as soon as possible, so that you can have a pair of lovely children. In Fenji Palace. The emperor paced back and forth in the bedroom. The queen sat on the couch drinking hot tea to warm herself up, watching the dog emperor walking back and forth for a long time. Your Majesty, sit down and have a cup of hot tea. The emperor stopped and looked sideways at the queen on the couch. He walked a few more steps in anger, and finally sat down on the couch with his clothes lifted. He took the teacup to his mouth and took a few sips. After drinking 2 sips of hot tea, he calmed down his unhappy mood. Linger. The queen looked up at the dog emperor, Your Majesty, I'm here. The emperor held back for a long time and uttered a sentence, Do you still want to leave the palace? The queen, why does the emperor ask this? The dog emperor has a brain seizure again? You did it last time, it made me look for you. Don't you know I? The emperor was so angry that he took 2 breaths, and then he said after a while, I'm ready to abdicate, and you still want to leave the palace. Good night. The new book has been published, please vote for recommendation and give it 5-star praise. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 651. The queen thought the dog emperor had misunderstood, so she explained, Your Majesty, I don't want to leave the palace. The emperor asked uncertainly, Really? The queen said, Of course it's true. If I really wanted to leave, I would have left long ago, not until now. Last time, it was because the emperor was too much, so I had no choice but to go out and have some peace and quiet. The emperor thought of the queen's departure that time. There were indeed reasons for him, but he was the emperor, so he didn't give him any face and left without saying goodbye. What did that Yechu do? The queen said, I haven't seen you for 3 years, so he just came to see me. The emperor asked again, how old were you when you met him? The queen looked at the emperor in confusion, 8 years old, what's wrong? Then he said he had known each other for more than 40 years, so that's also more than 40 years, the emperor snorted. He had seen Ling Er when she was 6 years old, 2 years earlier than Yechu. Queen, in a few years, it will be 40 years, and it will be soon. The emperor was in a better mood at this time. He turned his head and stared at the queen for a long time. Suddenly, he thought of the queen's appearance when she was 6 years old, wearing a red dress, which was the most eye-catching among all the daughters. It was not because she was wearing red, but because of her phoenix eyes, which were bright and energetic. He stood among the princes, looking at the red figure from afar, chasing and playing with her daughter. The queen saw the emperor staring at her without saying anything, so she called out, Your Majesty, what's wrong? The emperor withdrew his thoughts, smiled and shook his head, nothing. Asterisk. June Mocking was sitting in the house drinking tea and chatting with Feng Qingjian. The two had been separated for 20 years. June Mocking was a man of few words, and Feng Qingjian was not much either, but in front of June Mocking, she talked a lot. Shui Hui came in, lowered his eyebrows and nodded, Master, Mr. Ye is here. June Mocking raised his head when he heard the words, and saw Yechu walking in slowly in a moon-white long gown, wearing a black fox fur coat. Mr. Ye, long time no see. Master Imperial Master, long time no see. After Yechu sat down, he glanced at the woman next to June Mocking and asked, Is she your wife? When Yechu met June Mocking, he only had a daughter who was a few months old, and his wife suddenly disappeared. June Mo introduced, Well, my wife Feng Qingjian. Feng Qingjian greeted generously, Mr. Ye, hello. When Yechu first saw Shen Shui, he felt that she looked very similar to Xiaju. Now that it is confirmed that it is Xiaju, it still feels incredible. Xiaju looks very similar to you. He looked at June Mocking again, Congratulations, the family is reunited. Thank you. June Mocking picked up the teapot and poured a cup of hot tea in front of Yechu. Are you here to visit Chang Wenling? Well, I just met her. Yechu picked up the teacup in front of him and handed it to his lips and took a sip. June Mocking asked, Do you plan to stay like this? Yechu paused while drinking tea, thinking of Chang Wenling. He said, If I don't see her truly happy, I can't let go. Feng Qingjian was eating melon seeds, which were given to her by her daughter, and she couldn't stop eating them. She discovered a secret. You like the queen? Yechu looked at Feng Qingjian and didn't deny it. Well, what's the problem? The queen is the emperor's woman, Feng Qingjian wanted to say. Aren't you thinking about a married woman? Yechu said indifferently, so what? If she is unhappy and regrets it, I can take her away. Feng Qingjian said, The emperor and the queen have been married for more than 20 years. If they regretted it, they would have done it long ago. Yechu paused after hearing this and continued, Life is unpredictable. What if they regret it later? You are too infatuated. Feng Qingjian looked at June Mocking, I can't be so infatuated. If you didn't respond at the beginning, I might not have been able to hold on. June Mocking paused in drinking tea, raised his head and looked at Feng Qingjian, and heard her say again, Fortunately, you are aware of it? He was silent for a while and uttered 3 words, Thank you. Feng Qingjian laughed out loud, How can I say thank you? June Mocking asked seriously, Then what should I say? Feng Qingjian cleared her throat and said, You should say that we are destined to be together. So many women want to be your wife, but they all failed. Only I have moved your heart, and you have been pure for me for so many years. June Mocking said the sentence again with great awareness, we are destined to be together, so many women want to be my wife, but they all failed. Only you have moved my heart, and you have been pure for me for so many years. Feng Qingjian. Yechu looked at the two people in front of him. He used to be curious about who June Mocking's wife was, and what kind of person could steal June Mocking's heart. Now that he saw her, he found that only a woman like Feng Qingjian could move a cold-hearted person like June Mocking. Seeing Feng Qingjian didn't speak, June Mocking asked again, do you want to say it again? Feng Qingjian sighed helplessly, drink your tea. Okay. June Mocking raised the teacup to his lips and took 2 sips. June Mocking looked at Yechu again, how about drinking together tonight? Yechu nodded, okay. Xiao Jinyan learned that Yechu was coming, and couldn't wait to see him. It has been 3 years since the last time. Before, he had not recovered his memory, but now that he has recovered his memory, he knows that when he was in Nanzhao Kingdom, it was Yechu who taught him Kung Fu and was also his master. Xiao Jinyan came to the study and saw a man in a moon-white long gown standing in front of the desk. He stepped forward to greet him, Master. Yechu turned around and saw Xiao Jinyan. He found that he had become calmer after 3 years. I heard that you recovered your memory. Xiao Jinyan said, yes, Master, it was the national master who helped me recover it. Yechu was not surprised, only he can do it. Xiao Jinyan asked, when did Master come back? Why is there no news? Yechu said, he just returned to the capital today. Xiao Jinyan asked, how long does Master plan to stay this time? Yechu, after the first month of the year. Xiao Jinyan thought for a while, and still asked the doubts in his heart, I remember Master said 3 years ago that it was my mother who asked Master to come to Nanzhao to teach me martial arts. Yechu said, well, if she didn't say it, I wouldn't accept a disciple. Xiao Jinyan heard it and saluted again, thank you, Master. Yechu looked at Xiao Jinyan. He had never thought of accepting a disciple. If it weren't for Ling he wouldn't have gone to Nanzhao. However, Xiao Jinyan did have a talent for martial arts, and he actually earned it. Dinner, Yechu ate with them. Yechu, like June Mocking, rarely drinks, but today they drank 3 cups. Xiao Jinyan also drank 2 cups with him. Feng Guiu was happily discussing with Feng Qingjian what to eat for breakfast tomorrow morning. Mother hasn't eaten red bean rolls yet, do you want to try it? Feng Qingjian nodded vigorously, okay, make some fried dough sticks, fried dough sticks are delicious. Feng Guiu also craved fried dough sticks, licked his lips and asked, what about pot stickers? Feng Qingjian had never heard of pot stickers, and was a little curious, what are pot stickers? Feng Guiu explained, it's a bit like dumplings, but it's fried in oil and tastes better than dumplings. Feng Qingjian imagined it for a while and decided to trust her daughter's taste, then try it, I haven't eaten it yet. Susu suddenly came over and said in a baby voice, I want to eat big meat buns. Feng Guiu looked at Susu's greedy look and agreed very readily, okay. In fact, Dong Gong made meat buns every now and then, because Susu, Dabai, and Swichuan loved to eat them. Since the tiger lion beast came, we have to make a lot of meat buns. It has a scary appetite, and the key is that it loves to eat meat buns. Susu raised her 2 little hands and drew circles, Mom, make a lot of them. Feng Guiu smiled and said, Mom knows, Dabai likes to eat, Swichuan likes to eat, and the tiger lion beast likes to eat. Susu patted her chest and said, and I like it too. Feng Guiu nodded vigorously, yeah, Mom is anxious, Chengzi also remembers it. Susu hugged Feng Guiu's arm and smiled with curved eyebrows, Mom also likes it. Feng Guiu praised generously, Susu has a good memory. Susu said proudly, Father said I am like Mom, Mom also has a good memory. Feng Guiu couldn't help laughing out loud. Xiao Jinyan was saying that his daughter was also greedy, right? Yachu temporarily lived in the palace. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the 5th day of the first lunar month. The emperor announced his abdication and became the emperor emeritus, and the crown prince Xiao Jinyan succeeded to the throne. The emperor had taken precautions in advance, and since that illness, he had always made excuses that he was not in good health. The civil and military officials naturally did not say a word, and they also believed that the crown prince was a wise ruler. Xiao Jinyan's succession ceremony was on the 8th day of the first lunar month. The Ministry of Rites began to prepare for the succession ceremony early. In addition to the Ministry of Rites, even the Shanghai Bureau was rushing to make dragon robes and phoenix robes overnight. The night before the coronation ceremony, Shen Chuwei looked at the phoenix robe and could not believe that she would be the queen tomorrow. Xiao Jinyan came over, stood beside her, lowered his eyes and looked at her. "What's wrong?" Feng Wei raised his head and looked at Xiao Jinyan, still a little bit unbelieving. "You are the emperor, and I am the queen." Xiao Jinyan was very happy. "Well, you will be my queen tomorrow." Feng Wei thought about it and asked again, "Will it be difficult to be the queen? Will the civil and military officials hold a large-scale beauty contest at that time?" Xiao Jinyan stretched out his arms and hugged her into his arms, and said in a gentle voice, "What are you afraid of? I am here." Feng Wei smiled, "I'm not afraid, but I have a backer." Xiao Jinyan laughed when he heard it. "Yes, the state teacher is a very strong backer." Feng Wei yawned, "Jinyan, go to bed, you have to get up at 5 o'clock tomorrow." Xiao Jinyan also felt that he should rest early tonight, and the coronation ceremony is more troublesome than getting married. Tonight, Xiao Jinyan just hugged her to rest, and did not do anything else. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Feng Wei was called up without sleeping well. She squinted her eyes and let a group of maids help her bathe and change clothes. Today was the longest day Feng Wei had ever had. The process was too complicated. This was not the point. The point was that she was hungry. In front of the civil and military officials, she could not eat secretly. She was so hungry that her head was heavy and her eyes were blurry. Just being congratulated by the civil and military officials was a long process. She turned her head to look at Xiao Jinyan. He was wearing a bright yellow dragon robe and a crown on his head. His momentum was completely different from that when he was the prince. She still remembered that he said that his wish was to be a wise monarch. National affairs, worrying and tiring. She sighed, it was better to be a salted fish, except eating and sleeping, without having to think about anything. After the ceremony, Feng Wei collapsed directly on the couch. "I can't do it anymore, I'm so tired." Xiao Jinyan poured a cup of hot tea and handed it to her. "Come, drink some hot tea first, Chengzi has gone to prepare lunch." Feng Wei sat up with difficulty, took the teacup from his hand and passed it to his lips and drank a few sips to moisten his throat. Chengzi was very fast and brought the hot food in a short while and placed them on the table one by one. Feng Wei put down the teacup, sat at the table impatiently, picked up the chopsticks to pick up the braised pork and put it into his mouth, as if he was eating a delicious delicacy. Xiao Jinyan picked up some food for her and reminded her, "Eat slowly." Feng Wei said confidently, "You don't understand. When you are hungry, you have to eat big mouthfuls to feel comfortable. Xiao Jinyan, when you are not hungry, you eat well." Feng Wei said while eating braised pork, "It's all the same." He picked up a piece of meat and put it in Xiao Jinyan's bowl. "Your Majesty, you eat too." It was the first time that Xiao Jinyan heard her call him Your Majesty, and he was still a little uncomfortable. He smiled and called, "My queen." Feng Wei took the time to raise her head and smiled, "Your concubine is here." Since Xiao Jinyan ascended the throne, the two moved out of the East Palace. One lived in Fenji Palace and the other lived in Yangzin Palace. Feng Wei was a little worried. "What about my chicken coop, small vegetable garden, and my fish pond?" Fenji Palace is far away from the East Palace, and it is not so convenient to go back and forth. Xiao Jinyan saw the reluctance in her eyes and comforted her, let them guard it for you, just eat. What can Feng Guiu say? They couldn't move to Fenji Palace. On the 15th day of the first lunar month, the Empress Dowager took Susu out of the palace and went to Lingnan for a short stay. The main reason for taking Susu with her was that she couldn't see her when she missed her. When Susu left, she took Dabai with her. If possible, Susu would take the tiger lion beast with her. These days, Yechu also knew that the emperor abdicated for Ling-er. When they left the palace, Yechu saw them off in person. Chang Wenling's eyebrows were smiling, and you could tell that she was in a good mood at a glance. Brother Ye, I'm going out to play. Yechu stared at her for a long time. Yeah, have fun. Chang Wenling waved to him happily, Brother Ye, goodbye. Yechu stood on the city wall, watching the luxurious carriage go farther and farther until it could no longer be seen. Ling-er's vision was not bad. After waiting for 30 years, she finally didn't have to be trapped in the palace. It's just that the person was not him. It was still the person she chose when she was young. For 30 years, I've been worried about you being bullied every year, and I've been looking forward to you asking me to take you away. Now, I'm really going to let it go. In the carriage. After leaving the palace, without the constraints of the queen's identity, I feel extremely relaxed. Chang Wenling lifted the curtain and kept looking out. Xiao Qi saw it, a little dissatisfied, and put his arm around her shoulders and took her into his arms. What are you looking at? Chang Wenling raised her head to look at the dog emperor. No, he was already the emperor. I feel that something is wrong with brother Ye. Good night, babies. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 652. Xiao Qi was a little dissatisfied. Why do you care about him? Chang Wenling said, I have known brother Ye for so many years. We are like brothers and sisters and friends. What's wrong with caring about him? Xiao Qi patted Chang Wenling's back as if to comfort him. Okay, it's rare to come out, don't think about these unhappy things. Chang Wenling also felt that she should be happy that she rarely came out, but she felt a little uneasy in her heart. Yechu returned to the palace and said goodbye to Jun Mocking. Jun Mocking asked, where are you going this time? Yechu said faintly, there is a monk who has been with me for many years. He said that the time has come, but I didn't believe it. Now I believe it. Jun Mocking heard Yechu talk about this matter and understood what he meant. If you have decided, I will not persuade you. See you again if there is a chance. After saying this, Yechu turned around and left the palace. Feng Qingjian looked at Yechu's back as he left, and felt a little sympathetic to this loyal man. She took Jun Mocking's arm and said, Brother Qing, your brother is a bit miserable. Jun Mocking could not deny, yes, it is indeed a bit miserable. Tao Miner's wedding is on the 22nd of this month. Feng Guiu was a little excited. On the one hand, Tao Miner finally got married, and on the other hand, there was another banquet to eat. Xiao Jinyan had just ascended the throne and had no time to go. She had to go alone, but she didn't mind. On the wedding day, when Feng Guiu and Su Qingqing came, Tao Miner had already put on her bright red wedding dress. Tao Miner's appearance was not particularly outstanding, but she was the type that was pleasing to the eye. Today's dress was very delicate and beautiful. Feng Guiu asked curiously, are you nervous? Tao Miner smiled and said, of course I am nervous, but I am looking forward to it. In fact, she had been looking forward to this day for a long time and wanted to marry Song Tanhua immediately. Su Qingqing smiled and said, I can see that you can't wait to marry Song Tanhua. Tao Miner was a little embarrassed, weren't you in a hurry to marry Jun Wuxian at the beginning? Su Qingqing also wanted to marry Jun Wuxian as soon as possible at that time, but the new house needed time, and her face also needed time. It's the same, it's better to marry the man you love sooner rather than later, he. Tao Minor agreed with Su Qingqing's words, it's true. Su Qingqing looked at Feng Guiu and asked curiously, Queen, what do you think? Feng Guiu smiled and said, I'm different from you, I'm not in a hurry. At the beginning, she was actually not ready, but Xiao Jinyan asked her to sleep with him. Su Qingqing thought for a while and said, that's right, you and the emperor have been together all the time, unlike Minor and I, who can only be together after getting married, it's really different. When the sedan chair came, Wang held her daughter and was reluctant to let go. Tao Minor was very happy, but she couldn't show too much happiness when she saw Wang crying so sadly. Wang wiped her tears, took the red veil with auspicious dragon and phoenix from the maid, and covered her head. Then she was helped out by the matchmaker. Song Tanhua was wearing a red wedding dress today, watching Tao Minor being led out by the matchmaker and then handed over to him. Feng Guiu watched Tao Minor get into the sedan chair, and then left Tao's house. It's a pity that I can't have the banquet over there. Su Qingqing was a little speechless. Empress, why are you always thinking about eating? Isn't the harem busy? Feng Guiu smiled and said, I'm the only woman in the harem, and it's not as lively as the East Palace. Su Qingqing snorted twice, I can see that the queen is here to show off. The emperor only has you as a woman. Feng Guiu said, my eldest brother is only a woman like you, what's there to show off? Su Qingqing pouted, don't mention your eldest brother, he gets angry when you mention him. What's wrong? Did my eldest brother bully you? Feng Guiu couldn't believe it, my eldest brother doesn't seem like the kind of person who would bully women. Who said that? He would bully. Su Qingqing leaned close to Feng Guiu's ear and whispered a few words. Feng Guiu felt the same pain, I understand it too well, all men are the same. Su Qingqing nodded vigorously, that's right. Feng Guiu suddenly suggested, then you can take a day off with him. Su Qingqing looked at Feng Guiu with a puzzled look, take a day off? How do you take a day off? Feng Guiu leaned close to her ear and said a few words. Su Qingqing opened her eyes wide, can it be like this? Feng Guiu smiled proudly, of course, I do it often. Su Qingqing admired him so much. That night, Su Qingqing looked at Jun Wuxian who was taking a shower, thinking about what Feng Guiu said today. Jun Wuxian lifted the quilt and lay in, stretched out his long arm and hugged her into his arms, that hand was a little restless. Su Qingqing grabbed the hand and said, I have something to say. Jun Wuxian lowered his head and kissed her lips, then buried his head in her neck, go ahead. Su Qingqing said, I want to take a day off. Jun Wuxian paused, raised his head and looked at her in confusion, what do you mean? Su Qingqing explained, that's right, I'm taking a day off today. You have nothing to do tomorrow, so it's the same if you take a day off tomorrow, Jun Wuxian said and lowered his head and kissed her again. Su Qingqing felt a little hot, Xian. Jun Wuxian did not raise his head, Qingqing, there is nothing to do tomorrow, so take a day off tonight. Su Qingqing had to admire, you have great energy. Jun Wuxian chuckled, no, it's not as good as the storybook you read. I'll be exhausted all night. Speaking of the storybook, Su Qingqing felt a little embarrassed. Jun Wuxian took away the storybook that year, but he ended up reading it himself. For example, for a whole night, or for example, for 3 days and 3 nights, I couldn't get out of bed. He said, is that still a human being? Feng Guiu said, just read it in the book, don't take it seriously. After Su Qingqing experienced it herself, she realized that if it really lasted all night, she would definitely be injured. As for where the injury occurred, it goes without saying. Wedding night with flowers and candles. Song Tanhua was an official of the imperial court, and most of the people who came to have the wedding banquet today were colleagues. After drinking for a while, he was a little drunk, and then those people were willing to let him into the bridal chamber. He staggered into the bridal chamber and saw Tao Minor sitting on the bed with her red hijab still on. He walked in holding onto the doorframe, came to her with empty steps, picked up the wedding title and raised the red hijab. Tao Minor raised her head and looked at Song Qing with a shy look on her face. Song Qing put down her happy words, stared at Tao Minor for a while, and then sat down next to her. This was the first time that they sat so close. Minor. Tao Minor smelled a strong smell of alcohol and reminded her in a low voice, "I need a glass of wine." Only then did Song Qing react, "I almost forgot." After saying that, he stood up and got 2 glasses of wine, one of which was handed to her hand. After drinking a glass of wine, Tao Minor raised her head and looked at Song Qing, feeling nervous and shy. "I'll undress for you." Song Qing nodded, "Okay." Tao Minor reached out to his waist and untied his belt. When she was about to untie his clothes, she was held by Song Qing and fell to the bed. Song Qing looked down at Tao Minor. Maybe because of drinking, he was a little different from his usual gentle and polite nature, and he was very eager. However, it was my first time to take off a woman's clothes, so I wasn't very good at taking them off. Being too anxious will make it harder to untie it. Finally, with the help of Tao Minor, she took off her coat. Good night, Spicy. Strong new book.